Hello everyone, welcome to this first lesson of the first course that I'm going to upload here on YouTube about Blender. So this course is called 3D Modeling, Shading and Rendering in Blender, and this course will have 10 lessons. So the first lesson is Introduction to Blender and Blender's interface. So anyways, let's get started with the first lesson. Introduction and Blender's interface. In this lesson, we're going to look at 4 things. We will get to know the default interface of Blender. We will quickly talk about the editors in Blender. We will look at workspaces, and we will learn how to customize and save our preferences for Blender's interface. So let's jump right into Blender and start working. So here I am in Blender. I'm not going to talk about how to download it because Blender is completely free, and if you're watching this video you already, I assume that you have already downloaded Blender. If you haven't, please go to blender.org/download. It's completely free. After you have downloaded, install and open, you will see something like this. So this simple window is called splash screen, and we don't need that now. You can see one thing that might be important is this Blender's version. I'm using 4.1.0. This is the newest stable version of Blender. If you click anywhere else, it will go away, and if you ever need it back, you can come here to upper left corner, click on this Blender icon and splash screen, it will come back. So this is the interface. Immediately you will see a vast area here, which will be our playground. We will add stuff and create stuff here. But first of all, let's look at the menu, Blender's menu. It's the first thing to know if we want to know Blender's interface. So the first menu is File menu. Here, I would say the most important things: new project, you can create new project, open recent projects, open some project which is located on your computer. You can save your project. You can also quit and do a few other things. We will look at them too. The next menu is Edit menu. The only thing that we ever use Edit menu is to go to Preferences, and now Preferences has its own shortcut right here, and you don't even need to come here. I don't usually use anything else from here. Render, it has its own menu dedicated. Rendering is the process of creating a photo or video of whatever you have made in the scene. So we'll learn how to render stuff in the future. And then we have Window menu. I probably never use it, and you might not use it either. The only thing that I ever touch is this toggle window full screen. I usually like to work in full screen. And then this help menu. If you ever need help, online help, you can come here. Go to, for example, Blender's manual, and Blender has a wonderful manual there. You can go. And it recently updated, and it's more comfortable and more readable. It's a fantastic manual. So right next to it we have workspaces, and if you look carefully, we are inside this layout workspaces. We will talk about workspace a bit later. Now let's look at the main part of the interface. And if you look carefully, the interface is divided into areas or regions, or in each region you have a separate editor. These are called editors. We'll talk about editors too. So let's look at this biggest window or biggest area. This is called the scene, our scene. By the way, I am pressing the middle mouse button and dragging to orbit around the scene. Then you can see it from here too. Anyway, this biggest window is called the scene, and its official name is 3D viewport. Where you can view all of your stuff. And everything that you see in the 3D viewport is usually an object, or usually objects, right? I'm left clicking to select these objects. And 3D viewport has its own menu here, and you can find all the tools, all the options here in these menus. But these are context sensitive, or these are based on which mode you are in. For example, if you have different modes for different operations, different purposes. For example, you have edit mode. We will talk about edit mode. And as soon as you go to edit mode, the menu changes, the tools change. So yeah, we'll talk about that. And then just right to this window, left to the window, we have tools. Like other software, Blender has tons of tools, and they are usually located on the left right here. There are lots and lots of tools. And these are also context sensitive, or these will change depending on what mode we are in, what our purpose, what we want to make in Blender. For example, again, if I go to edit mode, there are more tools. We'll talk about them. In sculpt mode, there are even more tools. We'll talk about them in separate free courses here on YouTube. So let's go back to object mode. So these are menus, these are tools, and we have these things. Don't worry about them too much. This is orientation. I would say these will define where our right is, where the front is, or where south, east, north, and stuff like that is. Simply, or you don't have to understand now. So the next one is called the pivot point, based on which point the transformations happen, and this will define what central point you want to use. And snapping is kind of it's restricting movement, scale, and rotation. And it's not actually restricting, it's actually applying some sort of measures. And yeah, it's a complex, it can be a complex topic if you're completely new to that kind of stuff. Snapping, you can see this magnet, which means your transformations might snap to certain measurements or to certain features in the scene. And then we have proportional editing. You don't have to know this now because this is not used very often. And then we have these options. We won't touch the first two, but this one is interesting. You can click on this orange area and everything disappears. So this drop-down menu deals with what you are able to see in this 3D viewport and what you are not able to see usually. And then we have these balls. I don't know if they are balls, but they are 4. Anyway, so these deal with Blender's way of calculating the visual appearance of the objects in your scene. So we will talk about them. For now, we won't touch them either. And these tools are navigation tools, and there is a camera tool too. If you click on this, for example, you look at the scene through a camera. You take a camera in your hands and you look at the scene. You turn on your camera and you look at the scene with the camera, and this is the camera. And these gizmos, you can just hover and you can see this white circle. As soon as you hover over these areas, you can left click and drag to orbit around the scene. It's the same as holding down the middle mouse button and dragging, but you can just click on one of these letters, for example X. You have this zooming option. You can left click and hold and drag up and down to zoom in and out. You can pan. We will talk about them a bit more in the next video. So these are simply navigation tools, and there is one hidden tool here in this 3D viewport, which is here, little arrow key. You can press on this and you can see it. You can just drag and hide it, open it, hide it, and there is a little shortcut for this on the keyboard. You can press N key, N. You can see the key from here too. I think this is probably the first shortcut I'm talking about in Blender. Actually, Blender is famous for its shortcuts. There are tons and tons of shortcuts, and you will always be using them. So I think this is probably a bit too much about the introduction of this 3D viewport, but I'd like this to be as comprehensive as possible. I think that's all, and let's go to the right of this 3D viewport, to the top right hand side corner. Here you have this window called Outliner. This is an outliner editor. You probably understand what this is. It outlines everything in your scene in a kind of listed order. It's a good way to sort things out, find things, hide things, unhide things, and collect things in different collections or folders. Everything here will be listed here in a different in a different view. You can, for example, hide this lamp, and the lamp is not visible in the scene, but it is here, it is staying here. You can unhide it You can sort things out, you can create new folders and organize your objects into folders for better work. And let's quickly talk about this bottom window. This is a timeline for, you probably know that this is for animation. You can play animation, you can stop it, you can play backwards and you can stop, and you can jump from keyframe to keyframe with these two buttons, but we don't have any keyframes. Keyframes are for animation, and you can go back and forth to the end and to the beginning of the time with these buttons. There are shortcuts for that. We'll learn that in separate course. So, and the last part here, a little bar, I would say, it's a status bar, and it will show what you can do or what you are doing right now, as you can see. And there is some information about your scene and all the objects on your scene, in your scene. You probably don't see them here. If you don't see, come hover over the status bar, right click and turn on scene statistics if you don't see them. And finally, let's talk about this feature rich area. The most important part, one of the most important parts of Blender after this 3D viewport, I would say. This is properties editor, and there are tons of things here, and some of them are context sensitive. If you, for example, select this, left click and select this object, there are a few more things. If you select this light, you don't see as many things. So this is a central part, like you have a lot of things here, like render engine, what engine you will use for rendering your stuff, output properties, where you will save your images or videos and stuff. You will configure the formats and other things. View layer, scene layer, I usually don't go there. World settings, you have this world settings. Let me quickly change something, for example. And nothing changed because you will change it from here. You can click on world, and this is how you will change things, right? It's just crazy to do that. Let's go back. Don't do that, please. I just showed, and this is collection properties, these folder properties, object properties, modifiers. Blender has some very powerful modifiers here, hidden, ready to be used. And we have particle system, dynamic, static, hair particles and dynamic particles. Blender has fantastic physics properties, physics tools, simulation tools, and then we have constraints which will help greatly in animation. Object data properties, all objects have different properties here specific to that object. For example, camera has camera type, focal length, all kinds of different stuff related to cameras, and lights have, for example, color, strength, and all that stuff. So, and we have texture properties, the central texture properties panel in Blender. You always have this to work with textures. I mean, create textures, delete textures. And the first thing which I didn't talk about is tool properties or tool options. If you select any tool from here, you will have tool options here. But yeah, that's everything about this properties panel, and that's for now, that's everything about Blender's interface. But I'd like to show you something else, which are called editors. Let's quickly talk about editors. So everything that I showed you, every panel, every area here, 1, 2, 3, 4, not this guy, not this last bottom part, this is just a status bar. All these areas are actually separate editors. For example, this is an outliner editor. It's called editor in Blender. Well, let's call it outliner. Let's call it a separate feature. This is properties, called properties, as I said. 3D viewport. I'm just saying official names, right? Outliner, properties, 3D viewport, timeline. And these are just 1, 2, 3, 4 editors. Blender has a lot more editors than this. If you want to see all the editors that Blender has, you can come to any area actually, whether it's a 3D viewport, outliner, properties, or even timeline, any editor. If you look at the top left corner of each editor, you see this drop-down menu with this kind of different icon. Here, for example, you have a clock icon. Here you have this strange icon, I don't know what to say, hierarchy icon. and the settings icon. So if you click on one of them, you see all the editors that Blender has, and you can see properties is highlighted. It's a new thing. Before it didn't highlight, now it's highlighted. Outliner is highlighted. Here you can see 3D viewport is highlighted because this area is 3D viewport, this area is properties, this area is timeline, and you can see all other editors here, and you can change editors from there too. For example, if you want to have a little 3D viewport here, you can change it. Come here and choose 3D viewport, and you have a small 3D viewport here if you want. Come back to outliner. You can change each area to a different editor, as you can see here. So this is, we'll talk about other editors when we need them, but for now this is more than enough. So this is about editors, and now let's look at these workspaces. So we have modeling workspace, and as soon as I go there, a few things have changed. First of all, 3D viewport didn't change. We just went to a second mode, which is the edit mode. This is basically a modeling mode. We have sculpting. This 3D viewport didn't change, outliner didn't change, and this properties didn't change. As you can see, everything is staying the same, but the mode has changed. It's a different purpose. We are going to sculpt this within this mode, and you can come to UV editing. We'll talk about this too. And here a big change happened. Here you have UV editor, I would say, texture paint, shading, animation, rendering. So depending on what we want to do in Blender, we can use different editors and we can layout them. We can put them in different layouts and create a separate workspace for that purpose. For example, in texture paint workspace, we have image editor mode set to paint mode here, and we have 3D viewport here to look at the results. We can directly paint on our 3D models or directly paint on our textures. This properties editor has changed to, it's still the properties editor, but we are tool properties here. So yeah, you can create your own workspaces. For example, let's say, I don't know, maybe duplicate current layout, and you can rename it by double clicking on it, and or just custom or something, right? And you can change this area, for example, to, I don't know, file browser, or maybe it's outliner. This one is just a, I don't know, asset browser. This one is, I don't know, in animation, it is graph editor. And this area stays the same. So you can change this and create your own custom workspace with different editors laid out in different areas. So you can create, let's delete this mess. So I have just deleted it. You can click and delete. You can duplicate and other things. Sometimes I delete some workspace which I don't usually use. So now we have talked about workspace. Now let's quickly talk about customizing and saving different property preferences, I would say. Let's say I don't like this size. I usually like it this size, right? And I don't like this size, and let's go down and make it a bit smaller, or make it a bit larger. Or let's say I don't like this area at all. Let's say I always use, but let's say I never use it. I will right click here in the middle, this darker line, anywhere between them. You can right click and you can just join areas. Let's say just like that. You can join areas. Let's join. I like this, right? But if I work like this, and if I close Blender after I finish working and reopen Blender, it will not retain this interface. It will just go back to its original interface, default interface. It will not keep our settings. In order to keep that, we can come here to File, and we can come here to Defaults and Save Startup File. But remember, you only do this with a clean project, with a default project, not something that you have already made. If you save, if you make something, for example, you made a car, you worked for a long time, and it's a large model, and if you default it with that car, it means whenever you open Blender, you open that project, which is not ideal. So just open Blender, and with a default, maybe default cube, or you can delete this default cube, or if you can keep it with this clean project, with your whatever change you have. You can change a lot of things, as I showed here. You can just right click and do other things. You experiment with that. I'm not going to go into too many details. So you can change everything. You make Blender look whatever you like, and then File, Defaults, and Save Starter File, but with a clean project, with a default cube. So, and then you do that, and if you close Blender and reopen, Blender will keep all of your custom preferences. So yeah, let's create new project, because I don't like this crazy thing. So as you can see, it is still the original default interface. So as a last thing, I will show you one thing. It will be interesting to you, I hope. Edit, Preferences, and you have a lot of preference. You have a lot of settings here. This is Blender settings, but don't play too much with this, because you might change something and you might not find it again. So actually themes. This is what I wanted to show you. And you have presets. You can change this theme. For example, I like deep gray, and I'm using deep gray, but Blender's default theme is Blender Dark. This is what you see when you open Blender. This is also great, but for some reason I like deep gray preference usually, and I saved it, as you saw. And I also like this XSI. I don't know why. It's a beautiful theme. So to sum up, in this video, we have looked at Blender's default interface and hopefully learned what is where. We also looked at editors. There are so many editors, and we learned how to change editors, how to change the layout. We also looked at workspaces, which are basically different layouts with different editors for specific purposes. And finally, we learned how to customize the interface and how to save our preferences, like a theme, which is an interesting option. So that was everything for this video. And as a final note, I'd like to let you know that you can support us. And the best or easiest way is to give this video a like, of course, if you liked it. Or if you had any problems, you can always comment below the video. And if you want to learn everything in Blender, you can get my paid course on Udemy, and you will get the content that you see on your screen. It's more than 36 hours. We will cover more than 150 topics in Blender, in more than 220 lessons, and 6 projects. Please check out that course by following the link in the description below. If you get that course, you will have a great course in Blender, and you will also support us. So thank you for watching. See you in the next video. So let's continue with this free course, which is called 3D Modeling, Shading and Rendering in Blender. In the last lesson, we learned the first lesson, right? It was Blender's interface. So we have covered a few things. If you didn't watch that video, please watch that now before watching this video, because those were the basics, introduction to Blender and its interface. We learned the second lesson. It's navigating around the Blender scene. So let's jump into Blender and get started. Now I'm inside of Blender, and let's learn how to navigate in this scene. The first thing is this, holding down the middle mouse button of your mouse, right? The middle button scroll wheel, we can say. You can hold down and just drag to orbit around whatever object you're looking at. We learned that before, and you can do this from here, like hover over this white circular area, and click on anywhere, left click and drag to look around. And looking around or orbiting around the object depends on what you are focusing. The next thing might be focusing. It's important because you will quickly find yourself lost sometimes in Blender, or sometimes it's difficult to zoom into something. So let's learn focusing, and I will show you how to zoom. So you can click whatever object you have and press not F like many other 3D software. It is numpad. You can see that in the screen now, and you can press on that and you will focus on that object. When you're focusing on some object and you orbit around that object, if you hold down middle mouse button and orbit, you orbit around that object. So it's important. And let's select this cube and focus on that, and now we can orbit around that. And by now you probably have learned zooming in and out by scrolling the wheel. You can do this from here, the widgets. You can hold down left mouse button on this magnifying glass wheel or something, and you can zoom in out better, I think more incrementally, smoother, rather than these scroll wheels. So yeah, we have learned 3 things, right? Holding down middle mouse button and orbiting by holding down middle mouse button, or doing this, dragging from here with left mouse button and focusing on an object. You can select the object from Outliner, for example, and come back, hover. Your cursor needs to be in 3D viewport and press numpad 0. So this is focusing. If you ever find it difficult to select something, you can always select it from here and hover in the 3D viewport and press numpad 0 to focus. This is one of the things that beginners come across. I will show you one thing. They are focusing on this cube, right? Or let's say they are focusing on this lamp, let's say, and we're orbiting around this lamp. And suddenly they want to come closer, zoom into this cube, and they turn the scroll wheel into the cube. They want to go to the cube, but it's impossible, right? Blender seems like it's stuck. It is stuck and it doesn't like to zoom, no matter how many times you turn the scroll wheel, right? And it doesn't want to go to this cube. So it happens a lot, especially with beginners. So this is not a problem actually, because you are focusing on this lamp. This is why Blender doesn't want to go further than this lamp. I mean, if you want to zoom in, Blender only tries to zoom into this lamp. So if you want to go closer to this cube, instead you can select the cube and focus on this, and you can go inside the cube if you want. There are other ways. I will show you one more way to focusing on something. It's a really handy tool. Just press Shift B and drag and draw a rectangle to focus there. It's also focusing, and it's very, very handy. And the next thing is called panning. Instead of going around in the scene, you can move the scene itself, or you can move relative to the scene. It's called panning or pan. Let me show you what I mean. Just hold down or just press this arm icon or arm button. It's not arm, it's hand button, and just left click, yeah, drag, and you can pan. You can pan like this. And there is a shortcut for that. You just hold down Shift and also hold down middle mouse button and drag. Orbiting and panning are 2 most commonly used ways of navigation. Most of the time you don't work with one object, yeah? You have many other objects and you look around each object, and if you want to orbit around that object, you just pan. You don't have to focus on that object, and just pan and look at all those objects. Let me show you one thing. So let's come here and add. This is the first experience of adding objects in Blender, I think, if you're completely new to Blender. So let's come here and let's press select this monkey, and now the monkey is just inside this cube in the center of the world. There is some way, there must be some way to move the monkey. Let's use these tools and move this monkey away, and let's add another object. Add mesh. Remember, I selected from mesh, not other things. Mesh, the first thing, and then let's select cylinder, move the cylinder. Now I'm looking around this cube, right? Orbiting around. But if I want to orbit around the monkey, I just come here and orbit around this monkey. I just pan, and this will be the center of my movement, orbiting. I am orbiting around this one. And let's put this in center and let's orbit. Now I'm orbiting around this cylinder. So orbiting, panning, very, very important. Let's delete this. Delete. Just delete key on your keyboard. Select this, delete. Select this. And do you know how to bring this to the center? Can you do that? Do you remember anything? I hope you are right. You select this move tool and I hope you can see those arrow keys, red arrow here, because now I'm about to show you something else. Looking at your scene with keyboard shortcuts. You can use keyboard shortcuts or you can use these letters. Let's click one of these letters, for example, X. If I press X, I'm looking from the side. Press them and look from one side or the other side. Actually, you don't use these letters, but you use numpad keys. So the 3 numpad keys corresponding to these 3 axes are 1, which means you are looking from the front, 3, you're looking from the side, and 7, you're looking from top. 1, 3, 7. 1, 3, 7. And as a bonus, I will show you how to look from the opposite side. For example, if you press 1, you always look from front, right? No matter where you are looking from. If you press 1, you look from the front, just like that. But let me show you one extra bonus tip. If you hold down Control and 1 and press 1, you look from the back. 1 front, Control 1 back. Do you know how to look from one side and the other side? I hope you know this. 3 from right side or left side, I think. I don't know. So 3. For us, it is the right side, but for the monkey, it's the left side. Whatever, 3 from this side, Control 3 from that side. And just like that, we press 7 and Control 7 to look from top or bottom. And last but not least, I will show you some more bonus tips. Actually, 2 things. And one is used more often than the other, at least for me. This is walk navigation and fly navigation, which is very cool. Just like in game engines, if you ever use game engines, just games, right? If you played games, you control the character or you walk by pressing WASD. So WASD keys, don't press WASD now because they do some other things now. Let me show you. You come here to view navigation, and here you have walk navigation in the last option here. Let's press that, and now you don't have to press anything. You just look around with your mouse and press W to go forwards, S to go backwards, A to go left, D to go right. WASD. So, and there are 2 more letters here. E to go up, Q to go down. For some reason, my add-on is not showing the letters correctly. Not correctly, it doesn't show any letters here. You can move your cursor and look around. And if you look down at the status bar of Blender's interface, just here, I can't show it here, but I will highlight it in the video by editing. So you can see a lot of letters. So you can press them to see what they do. I'm not going to show everything here. And you shouldn't press any buttons on your mouse. If you press any button, you go out of walk navigation mode. So you can come again, navigation and walk navigation. While you're moving, while you're walking, now you can turn the scroll wheel to forwards to go faster, just like that. Now I'm going much faster. Or you can turn the scroll wheel backwards, if you know what I mean. You go slower. So turn the scroll wheel to see the effect. You can go faster or slower. And you can also press escape on the keyboard to go out of walk navigation mode. And there is this navigation, fly navigation. I don't use it very often. It's a little wonky and it's sometimes not very accurate, but yeah, you have this option too. So that's it. Thank you for watching and see you in the next lesson. So we will continue our course about 3D modeling, shading and rendering in Blender. In the last two videos, we talked about the interface of Blender and we learned how to navigate around the scene. In this lesson, we're going to talk about objects and tools. So let's jump right into Blender and start working. Now I'm in Blender, we can start learning and working. This video hopefully is a bit more practical than the previous two videos. In this video, we are going to look at two things, and there is this third aspect to it. So the two things are, the first are objects. We will talk about objects, what objects are, and which objects in Blender we mostly use, at least in this course. And the second thing is the tools, which tools we are going to use most often. And as I said, there is this third aspect to this video, which are shortcuts. We are going to use more and more shortcuts in Blender. Now let's talk about the first thing, which are objects. So what are objects? Objects are simply everything in your scene. These things are called objects. Probably this is the most important, mesh object. This is our raw material. We will edit this, model this, and create something out of this cube. We take a picture of our thing with the camera, but before we take a picture, we need to make it more beautiful by applying some colors, materials, right? Maybe some textures. I mean, we can project some images on top of this, and we will light this object with this light, and then we will take a photo of our creation with this camera, and we can save the image on our computer's hard drive and just share it on Instagram. So yeah, is this everything about objects? Probably yes, it is. But we will learn how to add new objects, how to delete, how to select objects. So first of all, what other options do we have in terms of objects? Well, if you come here, add menu, you have all different types of objects which are available in Blender. And if you look carefully, we have this mesh objects and we have this cube, which is this object. And we also have lights, and there is this point light, which is this object. And as you can see, we have different types of lights, and we have a camera object, which is this camera, or we can create as many cameras as we want. I simply created another camera. And do you remember how to move this camera from one place to another? If you watched our previous videos, you probably remember. You can select this tool and you have this arrow keys, which tells us you can move things around. I moved this camera, and to delete it, I just press the delete key. Now let me show you a really nice and very fast way of adding objects. Not very fast, but it's what we always do. It's Shift A. Shift A adds new things in many places in Blender. Shift A, not many, in a few places I would say. So Shift A mesh, you can select this monkey head and select this move tool, move this monkey head here. Shift A, select this cone or cylinder, let's bring in cone and move it here. So yeah, you can shift select both of them and delete it. Now we have a basic understanding of how to add delete objects. We can look at tools. So tools are everything right here. These are tools. And as I said, there are so many tools in Blender, but you don't see them here, right? There are only a few tools. Where are other? So tools are visible depending on what you are doing in Blender. Now we are in object mode. I mean, depending on what kind of mode you are in Blender, what you are doing, what's your purpose now, right? For example, now we are in object mode, which means we manipulate objects. We create objects, we delete objects, we select objects, we kind of hide objects, unhide objects. All the objects are visible and not maybe visible, or can be manipulated in object mode. And it's not always true in other modes. You cannot, for example, manipulate other objects when you are in a different mode. So, for example, edit mode. Edit mode is actually modeling mode, creating 3D models in edit mode. And immediately you can see you have lots and lots of tools now. And you also have other tools in listed view here. All of them are different modeling tools. So I mean, these are most often, which we will look at in this course, but there are so many other tools here. Now that we have seen where we see other tools, let's try to use some tools, right? So the first two tools are actually grouped together, and these four tools are grouped, and these tools are also grouped. So the first tool is select tool. So you can select with this tool. Actually, you can select with, whenever you are in move tool or rotate tool. But this is also not only selecting, but also rotating and moving these tools. This tool is only for selection, and you can also, while you are in select tool, you can move your objects or rotate with shortcuts. We will see them also, but this is select tool. If you see a very little arrow in this bottom right corner of each tool, if you see in any tool, it means there are more hidden tools here. If you hold down left key, left mouse button, you can see more tools here. And for some reason tweak is highlighted, but this tool is not tweak. This tool is actually a select box tool. And if you go to tweak, this is an interesting tool. You can select and move your cursor, drag your cursor to drag the selection. But yeah, 90% of time I use select box tool, so let's keep it here. This is 3D cursor tool, and I'm not going to talk about this now because it's less important now, and whenever we use it, actually I almost never use this cursor tool because there are other ways to move the 3D cursor, so yeah, it's not very important. Now, the most important three tools. These are called transform tools. This is moving. For moving, we have already used it, so you can just move. So this is move tool, and then we have rotate tool, and we can rotate our object along y-axis if you drag this green circle, along x-axis if you drag this red circle, and along z-axis if you drag this blue circle. If you drag from this white circle, you can rotate from the view. But if you drag, there is another drag here. If you drag from this very, very faint, pale, white, whatever color, if you see it, a little whitish highlight, I would say, here. If you drag from here, you can rotate randomly in any direction. And you can see it from this cursor too here. I messed this rotation. Actually, there is one interesting thing I will show you right now. You can come here to object, you can come here to clear, and you can clear location, object, clear, rotation, object, clear, scale. We haven't scaled it, we haven't changed the scale, so there is no point in clearing the scale. Now let's look at the scale tool. It's very similar to location. As you can see, there are arrows, not arrows, but square heads, I would say, and it scales your object. Maybe it's not too exciting, but it's an interesting tool, and you can scale along different axes. You can scale along all axes at the same time if you drag from this white circle. So these are three most important transformation tools, and this one, the last one, is the combination of all of that. All of them are combined. This is movement, this is rotation, this is scale, but we almost never use these tools by pressing or activating them. We almost always use shortcuts. So the three shortcuts for these three tools are these. So the first tool, G. G, as you can see here, G is for movement. Why G? Because G means grabbing something. You grab something and you take it somewhere. And the second, let's wait. Before going to the second letter, I'm going to explain something a bit more, and it's also very exciting, very interesting, very useful, I would say. Let's press G, and I would like to move this cube along this red axis. Do you know what the name of this red axis, or what the letter representing this red axis? I hope you're right, it's X. This is called X-axis. The yellow, this green one is, you're right, it's Y-axis. You can see it from here. And this invisible blue is Z-axis. So that's simple. You press G and you press X. And you move this object along X-axis. By the way, do you know how I am moving? I'm just moving the cursor. I'm not pressing anything on the cursor, not left press, not right press. I mean right click, left click, no, nothing. Just moving the cursor. And now we can learn about other two. So the rotation is, well, we're lucky it is R. Rotation R, and you can rotate around our axis to RX. Rotate around x-axis, RY, rotate around y-axis, RZ, rotate around z-axis. But if you want to rotate better, I would say, you can see this dashed line, this black line, I hope you see. And the dashed line is going here and ending in the center. So if you want to rotate this object in Blender, you should rotate the cursor around this central point, which is this central point, right? RZ, and you should rotate around that central point, remember. You can't just around your cursor about here and wait, expect that the cube rotates. No, RZ, if you do that, it doesn't want to rotate. You should rotate your cursor around that central point. The last letter is S, which is scale. S, you can scale it up and down. SY or SX. So yeah, this is it. Remember, G, R, X. These are our hero shortcuts. We use them all the time in Blender. In this lesson, we have talked about the types of objects, different objects, here. There are different types of objects, and we looked at the mesh objects. We looked at a few of them, and there are some light objects, and we looked at the camera object. We saw this camera object, and we can delete that if we don't want, because we are not going to use them for a few lessons. We learned how to add new objects. Do you remember the shortcut? If you don't, it is Shift plus A. Shift A, add an object. I hope you remember how to select multiple objects. And we also learned how to select all things in the scene by pressing, I hope you remember, A for all. Also, we talked about tools, and tools are visible depending on what mode we are in. Sometimes you don't see the modes from mode selector because mode selector is also dependent on the thing that you have selected in the scene. If you select object mode, and then you will see other modes, because other modes are related to this mesh. We looked at that, and we looked at these tools, these three tools: movement, rotation, and scale. And the three letters for them are, do you remember? For movement, it is, if you hover over your cursor, you can see it's G at the bottom. For rotation, it's R. For scale, it is S. So thank you for watching. See you in the next video. In this lesson, we are going to learn most common modeling tools in Blender, which you can use to make almost any 3D model. In the last three lessons, we learned, we got to know Blender. We learned how to navigate, how to go around the scene, and we also talked about objects and some very common tools in object mode. And today, we will learn, maybe today, maybe it is the same day, it doesn't matter. We are going to learn very common modeling tools. I would say these will be the most common modeling tools, and trust me, they are not very difficult to get used to. Now I'm inside Blender, and I have deleted the light and the camera, and if you accidentally delete this, you can add it back with Shift and A. This is add menu, and you can add any mesh like a cube, because meshes are our raw materials. Let's add this cube back. In this lesson, we will learn the most important tools in Blender to help us make something. In the previous video, we talked about these tools. If you didn't watch, please watch it. So let's go to here, come here to drop down menu. For this to be visible, to see the different modes, you need to select this object. Let's come here, and this edit mode is where we model our things. So let's go out of object mode and come into edit mode again, so that you see the difference in the interface, the tools, and also this object itself. Now we can select by drawing, we can select. Actually, there is a shortcut like other operations in Blender, we have a very handy, nice shortcut, which is the tab menu. We use it so often, it will just be second nature for you, just to press tab again and again to go into object mode, to go into edit mode and go to object mode. And the second thing that we need to know here before we actually use any tools, we need to understand what this model is made of. This model is a model, actually, a box. It is not a very complex or very nice model, but it's still a model, 3D model. And what this model is made of? This model is made of 3 elements. The dots, the points, I would say. In Blender, they're called vertices, and I believe in many other programs it's called vertices. One is vertex. A few of them are vertices in plural. Vertex and vertices. You can select vertices by default. And we have edges, 2 vertices connected by an edge. This line between these 2 vertices is an edge. And between 3 or more vertices, there is a face. So we have 3 elements: vertex, edge, and face. If you want to learn more about that, I have a very comprehensive video about how to model anything in Blender, what 3D models are made of. So you can watch that video if you follow the link on the top right corner. And another thing, by default, I can select these vertices, right? I can select these vertices, but I can also select these edges, not the vertices, but edges. And if you select an edge, it will automatically select 2 vertices too. And to change it, you come here. These are nice symbols for vertex, edge, and face. Let's change it to edge, and now you can select edges. You can change it to face, and you can select faces. And there is a shortcut for these 2. It is 1, 2, 3, but these numbers are on the number row above the letters on your keyboard. You just hit the numbers 1, 2, 3 above the letters. And the third thing that you need to learn before we actually use any tools is selection. Shift selecting also works here. You can hold down Shift to select multiple elements. If you are in edge selection, you can select these things. And sometimes we use box selecting, just click and drag to select in box form. Also, you can Alt select, but we will learn it. You can hold down Alt to select a loop. We will learn that a bit later. So Shift and Alt is very, very commonly used. So this is another shortcut. Now we have learned how to select stuff. Let's quickly talk about deleting stuff. Let's delete some elements. For example, let's delete this edge. X, delete edges. If I delete this edge, the faces connected to this edge also get deleted, because without this edge, this face cannot exist. So let's Control Z. Let's try deleting one vertex, X, and delete this vertex. Or you can press Delete key or X key. This is another shortcut, I believe. This is the first time I mentioned X, but you can use Delete. It doesn't matter. Let's delete vertex. If you delete one vertex, 3 faces will get deleted too, because those faces cannot exist without this vertex. And you can also delete faces. If you select 2 vertices, if you try to delete a face, nothing gets deleted because you haven't selected any face. To delete faces, you need to select faces. X, delete this face, and I deleted this face, as you can see now. Control Z. So now we learned how to delete faces, how to select them, how to delete them, delete not faces but vertices, edges, and faces. Now we can start talking about the tools. The first 3 tools are the tools that we have already learned in the previous video. You can select something and press G to move, which is very nice. You can select anything, any element, and press R, although this doesn't work with n vertex because it's just one point. There is no point in rotating a point, right? So if it is 2, you can rotate them. And scale, S. Those 3 tools are universal and they work in many places in Blender. Now finally, we will start to learn about different modeling tools. So the first tool here is extrusion. If I click this and drag this plus, I extrude. Remember, I selected the face and I can extrude more faces. You extrude one face, vertex or edge. Remember, I selected the face, but I can select a vertex and extrude this vertex, as you can see. And I created edge too, this edge. I can extrude an edge and create a face, just like that. Or like we have seen before, shift select for vertices, and we selected this face as a result, and we can extrude these faces. So as you can see, we can extrude vertices, edges, and faces. Not only faces, but extruding faces is more common. So we have learned the most important tool. In Blender, we hardly ever use these tools. I mean, we use them all the time, but we hardly ever click on them and activate and use these gizmos or whatever. We only use shortcuts. So the shortcut for extrusion in Blender is just E. Press E and you can extrude. By default, it extrudes along its normal. Also, you can extrude along an axis. For example, you can press E and you can press S to extrude it along X-axis, but this doesn't make sense in this situation. So E is for extrusion. If you press Alt-E, you will see other extrusion options. Just like holding down left click here, you can see other options. You can press Alt-E to see more options. So the only thing that you need to remember is the letter E for extrusion. It works with all other elements. You can press E and you can extrude anywhere. You can press E and extrude. In this situation, for example, when you're extruding an edge, it is free extrusion, so you need to constrain this extrusion along a direction. For example, you can press X and this extrusion is constrained along X-axis. So let's get rid of that. Now the second tool that I want to show you is cutting edges. So you can cut edges, actually it is here, loop cut. You can create a loop cut like by pressing only once, and by pressing only once, as you can see, you can create more cuts just like that. But as I said, I hate using these tools. Like I hate activating them. I can just use shortcuts. So loop cut, Control R. If you press Control R and if you hover over any edge, remember you need to hover over an edge to cut a loop along that edge, actually crossing that edge. And there are 3 steps here. So the first is Control R and hovering. Second is pressing left key. And third is pressing the left key again. Press Control R, left click, Control R, hover over any edge, left click. And there is you can have more steps here. For example, Control R, hover over an edge and turn the scroll wheel on your mouse to cut more loops, and press left click and left click. Now you have put this in the desired place. Or you can increase the steps to 5 actually by doing this. Look, Control R, hover over an edge, it's the first step. Spin the scroll wheel, turn the scroll wheel, this is the second step. Press left click, this is the third step, and move the cursor up and down to move all of these edges along these other edges. And left click again as a 5th step. So as you can see, there can be 5 steps, as many as 5 steps. Control R, turn the scroll wheel, left click, move it a little if you want, it's just only if you want, and left click again, confirm this operation. Now let's talk about the next tool, which is bevel tool or beveling. Beveling is flattening any edge or creating more edges from one edge. So let me show you. You use beveling for these 2 reasons. You can bevel an edge or flatten an edge, or you can duplicate an edge. So let's go to edge select mode, select any edge, and beveling is here, this little thing, it is beveling. but I don't like it just like other tools. From here, I don't like to activate. I mean, I like this tool, but I don't use it. I always use the shortcut, which is Control B, and move the cursor. And just like loop cut tool, you can turn the scroll wheel for more cuts. It's very nice tool. Now I will show you one good selection tool. Select the first edge and select the last edge by holding down while holding down Control, and Blender will select everything in between. And if you want to select it in a different way, you can hold down Alt and select this, and Blender will select all the loop, and you can shift select these two edges to deselect them. So remember, Alt selecting all the loops, and you can deselect by holding down Shift and deselecting any edge. So it's a nice thing. So by now we have learned more selection tools too, like selecting one thing and Shift selecting, Control selecting, Alt selecting. So you can hold down Shift to select multiple things. You can hold down Alt to select a loop. You can hold down Control to select the first selection and the last selection, and Blender will select everything in between. Let me introduce a new concept in Blender. Whatever you do in Blender, just like that, has a little trace. I mean, Blender will give you one last chance to change what you have just done. And it's called Adjust Last Operation menu or panel. I would say it's a panel, and it's here. If you open this, you can adjust what you have just done, just like that. But this is the last chance. If you click anywhere else, you will lose that last chance and it will never come back again. Other ways to do this effect, and you will always have a chance to change it afterwards, and these are called modifiers. There is actually a bevel modifier which has the same effect, but it is non-destructive. It's called non-destructive, and it will always give you a chance to change whatever you have done. Being able to change what you have done is called non-destructive workflow, which means you don't destroy anything. But this bevel tool is destructive if you don't use the last chance like that, and you will never bring it back. The only option is Control Z, but if you do a lot of things Control V, you will run out of Control Z options, and just maybe you need to do everything from scratch. So let me show you. There are a few options in the bevel tool. First of all, these width and these segments. So you can have more segments, and if you have more segments, you can change this profile, this nice rounded profile. You can change it from here, profile type. You can just change it to custom, and you have some presets here, like for example steps, or let's go to, I don't know, maybe something like this. If you're an architect, you can have more, and you can just change a few other things here because it's custom. Curve, as you can see here, more loops. I would say it's nice. And let's Control Z this, but Blender will remember that last option, so if you press Control B again, it will automatically have this. So let's go back to super ellipse, just one for the segments. So yeah, Control Z, press Control B. And there is one last thing in the bevel tool, which is beveling the vertices. You can also bevel these vertices. If I bevel this edge and come to Adjust Last Operation, I can change it to vertex. And I can increase the steps here, segments here, make it smaller or larger. And this is also a nice effect which can help you to make diamonds. There are lots and lots of other things that you can do in bevel tool, and you have this bevel modifier too. If you want to learn all of these much better, I have a full Blender course where I explain all of these things and all of this, almost all these modifiers. These are amazing and these are non-destructive. Yeah, you can get that course with the link below this video. So now let's go to the next tool, which is also one of the most important tools, and it is inset faces. Its name is inset faces, so you need to select faces to create insets or inner faces. So select a face, come to inset faces, this is it, and you can just hold or drag from the middle of the circle, which is not ideal, but yeah. I told you I don't like this workflow, activating these and using these. I don't like it. I just use, and everyone uses, shortcuts. So for inset faces, it's I. Press I and move the cursor. You don't have to hold down I, remember, just press I once and move the cursor or move the mouse. And you can see some information up here. While insetting, you can do some other stuff. For example, you can press I and I again to inset multiple faces. And this is most important and most commonly used. Let's select two faces, for example, and press I. Now I'm insetting kind of common face. But if while I pressed I, if I press I again, now I'm insetting separate faces. This can be interesting and useful. So and this also has adjust last operation panel. You can adjust a few things. You can use some other things like that. Control Z. While you're learning these tools, you will notice that all of these tools allow you to change the things that you have done one last time. For example, extrusion, you extrude and you have adjust last operation panel here. You can move the extrusion to different directions. You can choose what orientation to use while extruding, or Control R, we have just learned. And it also gives you one last chance to change a few things, just interesting things. You can play around with them. If we scale things, we have adjust last operation panel. So adjust last operation panel, I hope you have learned about this and you might use it in the future. But remember, adjust last operation will give you the one last chance. If you lose that chance, you will never have it back. And the last tool, the next tool, I think it's not the last tool, but it's the next tool in this video, which is moving edges or vertices along other edges. So it's pressing G twice. So let's cut a loop here, for example, left click, I left this loop, and I can select this loop by holding down what? I hope you remember, you can hold down Alt and select one edge and you will select all the loops. Did you notice, have you noticed what I have just done? I press Shift Z to go to wireframe view. It's a little secret for you, it's a little bonus for you. You can Shift Z, hold down Shift and Z, press them together to go to wireframe view. And you have noticed something here too. This has also changed. Shift Z, Shift Z. It's a second nature to me, so I accidentally pressed Shift Z just to see the other side of the cube, just to make sure that I selected the whole loop. Shift Z, yeah, I have selected the whole loop, and Shift Z again to go back. I didn't want to show this to you now, but I have showed you accidentally, and so please remember it. Shift Z to go wireframe, Shift Z to go back to solid view. And I wanted to show you GG. It has a good name, GG. You press G and you can move this edge wherever you want, like this crazy movements, or you can press G again to slide an edge. Slide the edge along other edges. And you can do this with vertices too. So press select a vertex, press G, you can move it anywhere you want. If you press G again, you can move it along other edges. And this is very useful in many situations. And the next tool that I would like to show you is this. It is called Fill Tool, and it's not here, but it is so often used that you can't model too many things without filling holes, or yeah, it's very important. Let's delete this face, for example. And how do you think I can fill it back? Of course, I can press Ctrl Z, but what if I do so many other things after I have deleted this face? How can I go back? If I press Ctrl Z 100 times, I will undo all of the things that I have done, I do later, right? Filling is so common in modeling. So filling is an F. How do you fill with an F? Well, you select all the edges and you can press F and you fill it. So now let me show you something else. Let's press Ctrl R and cut an edge loop here. And now I want to fill only the bottom part. Well, I can select the bottom part and I can press F to fill it. If I want to fill everything, I can press F to fill everything, but this is not a good thing because there is one non-continuous, I don't know how to call it, not continuous loop, and you should avoid this, or you should avoid faces which has more than 4 sides. This face now has more than 4 sides, so it's a universal rule. Actually, it doesn't matter to the computer, but it matters to you. While modeling, it can make things difficult if you have faces which has more than 4 sides. So all of your faces, not your faces, your model's faces, all faces should be quads. It's better to have quads. You're not going to your computer doesn't complain about it, or it doesn't break. It's simply not ideal to work with faces which has more than 4 sides. So let's delete this face, and I hope you know how to complete these, fill these. F, you can select all others, or you can select these, press F. Of course, there are other ways to fill a hole like this, a bit faster ways, but it takes about more explanation. Let me show you this. You can select this edge only and press F, F again to fill these 2 holes, but it doesn't work in all situations. For example, if you select this edge and press F, it doesn't fill it in a good way, so you should know what to select first. Now let's look at how we can delete edges without deleting faces. So let's select this with holding down Alt. You can select these and press delete and delete these edges. If you delete these edges, you delete these faces too. How do you keep the faces but delete the edges? Only the inner edge, like not outer edge, just like these, inner edges like these. Press X or delete and dissolve edges. Select these edges, press delete and dissolve edges. So these are nice operations. Now I'd like to show you the last thing in this video. Of course, there are so many other tools which are also important, but not as important as the tools that I have shown in this video. If we use any other tool in this course while modeling something, I will try to explain it a bit more in detail. So the last tool I would like to show you is called subdividing. You can select everything, or you can select any face, usually a face. We subdivide faces, but you can subdivide edges and vertices too. But let's select everything, or one face, or let's select everything first, and right click, and you can subdivide. This is the first option here. You can subdivide and right click again, subdivide again. As you can see, I'm subdividing and making more and more polygons here. You can subdivide once and with adjust last operation, you can change the cuts or subdivisions. You can have 10 levels of subdivisions here. Of course, you have a subdivision surface modifier here, which is non-destructive, but in many situations, this manual subdivision is very handy. So select everything, press X and limited dissolve to get rid of all of these things, which is a nice bonus for you. So again, if you want to learn all of these tools and all the ways to select stuff, to delete stuff, if you want to learn all of them, you can just go ahead and get my paid course. It's not very expensive. I think for a few bucks you can get it on Udemy, and the link will be in the description below this video. So I hope you have learned some things or many things in this video, and if you like this video, please like it. If you like it, please like it. So thanks again, see you in the next video. And in this lesson, we're going to look at common modifiers. We will look at a few modifiers. Hopefully this lesson will be a bit quicker. Now I'm inside Blender. So first of all, what are modifiers? Modifiers are small tools on their own to speed up different operations in Blender. And why are they important? They're important because they are non-destructive. I will show you one or two modifiers as an example, but if we use any other modifiers during creating actual project, we will learn those too. First of all, let's come to this place, this wrench or whatever icon this is. This is modifiers panel, and in order to add a modifier to an object, you need to select this object. Let's actually delete these two objects, we don't need them. And you can add modifier, and we have categories here. And the category which I'm going to talk about is this generate. The most important modifier, and which is used in almost every project, is this mirror modifier. So let's go ahead and add mirror modifier, and immediately you see nothing, right? There is nothing happened here. First of all, what this does is it simply mirrors the parts of the object to another side, providing symmetry while modeling something. And it's important, I said while modeling, so mirror is usually seen while we're modeling something. And mirror works based on pivot point of the object. It symmetrizes the model relative to the pivot point of this object, and in Blender pivot point is called origin point or just origin, and which is indicated with this very little orange dot. You don't see it because now cursor tool is active. Let's actually use cursor tool and put the cursor here. This is called 3D cursor or just a cursor. Let's go back and activate the select box tool, and now you can see this small orange dot. Hopefully this is this object's pivot point or origin point, and if I rotate this object in object mode, it rotates around that pivot point, right? Right click or escape to undo, and mirror mirrors or symmetrizes this object based on its pivot point. And because this pivot point is in the center, and because this object is already symmetrical around its pivot point, you don't see any effect when you apply this mirror modifier. And as you can see, Blender is trying to mirror this object along x-axis, which means whatever is here on this along x-axis will be mirrored or will be symmetrized to the other side along this x-axis. And it doesn't show anything if I choose Y or Z because it is perfectly symmetrized along all axes. So let's keep X, and actually let's delete this object and let's go to edit mode. Now we are going to learn an important concept. Let's go out of edit mode by pressing tab again. Yeah, in object mode. In object mode, if you move the object, the origin point will move with it. Control Z. But in edit mode, if you select everything with an A by pressing A, and if you move this object, the origin point stays in one place. So press X and move this object along x-axis and go out of edit mode. Now, if I rotate the object, as you can see, the pivot point is outside the object. Now, we can mirror this part along x-axis to the opposite side along x-axis. So let's try that, generate, mirror, and now you can see it's mirrored. This is the object and this is the mirrored object. Hopefully you have learned how mirroring works, and by pressing what can we look from the top? Do you remember what number we should press to look from the top of these objects? It's 7. Remember, if I move this object in object mode, the origin point will move along with these objects, but in edit mode, if I select everything and GY, I can move and leave the origin point there. Go out of edit mode in object mode, and let's activate Y-axis. This might seem a bit confusing at first, but trust me, you will learn it very quickly. And let's delete this object, Shift A, create a new cube. Remember, I'm in object mode. Don't forget to go to object mode. Create a new cube. For some reason, new cube is not in the center of the world, right? How do we bring it to the center of the world? And why did it start to appear here? Because by default, in object mode, if you create a new object, that object will be located where the 3D cursor is located. Come here, press Shift C to bring the 3D cursor to the center of the world. In object mode, remember, right click, and there is set origin option here. And you can set the origin point to 3D cursor, just like that. Now, if you see, let's get this 3D cursor out of way, and you can see this origin dot, which is the origin point of the object, and it's in the center of the world, where the cursor was before. Mirror modifier again, and it's here now. Go to edit mode, press 1, and move this GX to here. And if you look carefully, it can easily cross itself, right? It doesn't touch itself, it doesn't stop, but there is a way to do that. You can turn on clipping, and GX, now it kind of snaps to each other, right? Two parts of the object kind of snaps to each other, but you don't want a face between this joint sometimes, like X-ray view, right? You can press Shift what? Shift Z, if you remember. And there is a face between these two parts of this model. There is a face here. If you don't trust me, I can show it to you. There is a face here. I can select one face here. And let's delete this face. And now there is not face, and this one is usually better. So whatever it is, you can uncheck this clipping, go to edit mode, select everything, GX, and you can move it away. So this is one thing that I want to show. Let me show you the last thing. Shift A, create a, let's say this time we create a cylinder. GX, move the cylinder, but I will keep the origin point inside of the cylinder, but I will create another object, which is a cube this time. And I can use other object's origin point as the mirror. Shift. Do you remember how to bring the cursor to the center of the world? Well, it's Shift C. And it does not only bring the 3D cursor to the center of the world, it also frames everything in the scene, so it's visible, everything is visible. Let's go to selection tool. You can use other objects' origin point for the origin point or for the pivot point of mirror. Let me show you what I mean. Select this cylinder, add mirror modifier, and mirror object, it's rather a pivot object or something. Let's select this object, and immediately you see this cylinder is mirrored based on this object's origin point, which is in the center of the world. And now, based on this mirror modifier, with this mirror modifier, I will talk about a few other things about modifiers in general. First of all, you can use a few modifiers at the same time, not only one modifier. Let me add another modifier to this stack, which is, let's say, bevel modifier. And as soon as I added bevel modifier, you see beveling around these edges. Also, you can move these modifiers just like that to change the order in the stack. Sometimes it affects the overall view, sometimes it doesn't. You can delete the modifiers without deleting anything here by pressing this X. And as you can see, I deleted the effect, or you can delete this mirror modifier too by deleting. Control C to bring this mirror modifier back. And the last thing, which is essential, you can apply modifiers. By default, modifiers are non-destructive, which means you can just delete the modifier and keep the result as before. Let me add another modifier, which is bevel again. As I showed in edit mode tools, beveling is also a tool here. I went into edit mode of this, And there is bevel tool here, as I showed. It was, do you remember what shortcut we used for beveling? So it was Control B. We can bevel, go out of edit mode, we can bevel stuff, but this is destructive. If you bevel using bevel modifier, it is non-destructive, which means you can change the effect wherever you want, just like that. I'm changing bevel modifier. And if I don't need it, I can delete it. If I want to change it, I can change it all the time. If I don't delete this modifier, I can delete this modifier and I can delete this one too. But what if I want to retain, keep this effect forever and I don't want to change it in the future? Well, if that's the case, you can apply the modifier. Let's click on this and apply. Applying will keep the effect forever. It will make the effect permanent. It does not give you any other chance to change it later. So if you think you have done everything and you're satisfied with the result, only if you want to export your model to any other software, only then you can apply. In other situations, there is usually no need to apply modifiers. You can just keep the modifier forever, because you might not, you don't know, maybe you will change it in the future. So applying will keep the effect forever. I got rid of the modifier, but I kept the effect. Now it's permanent. We learned a few things about modifiers. Let me show you another modifier, which is array. It's a really good modifier. It creates an array of objects. Array means a number of objects. And you have offset between these objects. You can move the object along any axis, as you can see here. I'm changing it around along x-axis. I'm moving it. I can duplicate. I can multiply the count. I can multiply the objects, and I can also move them along other axes, just like that. And I'm using relative offset, which means the distance between these two objects are relative to their sizes. If I make the object bigger, the distance will also be bigger. You can use constant offset, which is just constant number. For example, it's 2.7 meters, and it doesn't take into consideration the size of the object. The distance between these two objects or two duplicates are not related or relative to the size of the object. Sometimes this is useful, sometimes relative offset is useful, sometimes you can use object offsets. Let me show you something else. SY, SZ, and let's bring this a bit closer to each other. And if you noticed, I hold down Shift while I'm changing these numbers. Left click and drag to change these numbers. If I hold down Shift, the changing is more incremental and more precise. If I don't hold down Shift, it's not very precise. I can hold down Shift for more precise movements. And I can just make them go like that, and this way I can create some sort of steps, as you can see here. SX, oh no, SY, I'm in edit mode, I'm editing the original object, and these duplicates will automatically be copied. So yeah, this is array modifier. You can apply it if you want, or you can just delete it to delete this effect. So this is a little introduction to modifiers. If you want to learn more about modifiers, there are other courses I hope you can find on YouTube. But if you want to learn everything about these modifiers, all modifiers and all properties of modifiers, everything you can change in modifiers and some other options in modifiers, you can go ahead and get my paid course on Udemy. It's especially if you follow the link below this video, you have a coupon for a good discount. So thank you and see you in the next video. In this lesson, we're going to have some modeling exercise. We're going to create a table, a chair, a computer and keyboard and mouse, and a small cactus in a bucket. So let me show you what we will make. So we're going to make this scene, but only this part, this computer. We will create this table, and this keyboard, this mouse, and this chair. So let's get started. So let's start with the table. I'm not going to worry about the size, the dimensions. We will just look at overall size and overall shape. Press 1. This is the front. This will be the front of the desk. Go to edit mode, Shift Z to go to wireframe view, and drag to box select these bottom 4 vertices. If you don't press Shift Z, you can select all. You only select the visible vertices, not all. So Shift Z to go to X-ray view or wireframe view and select everything. This is 2 meters, but it doesn't matter. So let's select and press G and move up, just like that. 7 to look from the top. Press A to select everything. S, Y, and we will make it smaller along a Y-axis. Maybe this size is good. So press 1. Now we need to make the legs. Press 7 again to look from the top. Control R and hover over bottom edge here. Turn the scroll wheel, left click again. And now we will scale these 2 edges. You can go to edge, or you can select these with Shift. I select it again. We will scale it along X because I'm going to make a polygon here. Try to make a polygon here. So SX. You can scale it like that, or I will show you one trick. Edge select mode, select these edges. Hold down Shift, select these edges, and you can Control B to duplicate them, just like that. And we will do the same thing along these, along X-axis. Let's go, Control R, turn the scroll wheel, left click, SY, and now Control B. Make sure these are squares. I think now they are squares. Now that's enough for us, for our purpose. Now let's go to face select mode. You can go to face select by pressing 3 above the letters. Shift Z to go back to solid view. Let's select these, all of them. Press 1. I shift selected all of these 4. I'm going to extrude them down. By pressing E, you just extrude them. And while you're moving or extruding, if you hold down Shift, you move more precisely. But I'm not sure if they are exactly on the ground. You can check it. For example, Shift B to come closer. I hope you remember Shift B. We learned it. And if you look, if you come closer, it is still above the ground, above this X axis, as you can see. I'll show you a little trick. Shift Z, select all these faces. Shift Z again. And we have the snapping options here. I told you in previous videos this is a bit more advanced topic. So let's turn on snapping. Let's come open this, and we don't change this increment, but we will toggle this absolute grid snap. Let's turn this on, and GZ. Now we can snap it to the grid. Grid means these lines, these square lines or squares. These are called grid, and now we can snap to the grid if we turn on absolute grid snap. After you have finished snapping, you can turn this off. Now Shift B and draw a very small box and come very close, and no matter how close you go, it is just snapped to the ground. It's very. And if you want to learn more about snapping and working with precise numbers in Blender, although it's a bit more advanced topic, I have a video. You can go there and learn. You can find the link above on the top right corner of your screen. So now, let's say this table is okay, right? Go to edit mode again. Let's select these. Press 2 to go to edge select mode. Select this edge. Shift select this edge, and now I selected all 4 edges. Shift Z and Control B to create this nice, and turn the scroll wheel to have more cuts. Tab out of edit mode. I think these legs are a bit too thick, but that's fine. Now let's go and create this computer. Now I will show you something to make your life easier. I will just bring in an image and we will create the computer by looking at the image. Have a bit larger place for that image. Let's bring this down. And here I'd like to put my image, and after we have finished modeling, I can just come back to Outliner. But for now, let's click this editor icon and go to Image Editor, and you can bring in an image here by pressing Open and select any image on your computer. So this thing, the image that we are going to bring here is called a reference image. When you're modeling, when you're making something in Blender or in other 3D modeling software, you usually need a reference image to look at and to make something, especially if you are creating something a bit more complex than our model. So let's bring in an image. You can download some images from the internet and open them by pressing this open icon. So I brought this image of computers. These are Apple iMacs, and these have the laziest design in the world. They're just flat boxes. I think Apple designers are the laziest designers in the world, I think. They don't want any fancy curves or anything like that. But they look elegant, right? So let's try to create one of them. We are not going to make this exactly necessarily. We're just using this as a reference. So let's create one mesh. Let's create a cube. While we're making this computer, we can hide this table. So let's select the table, Shift Z, you can select it like that, and you can press H to hide it. And if you want to unhide that table, you can press Alt H. This is one thing that you can do. Or another thing, you should probably avoid this, but it's a better way to, I will show you that too. You can press the cube that you're going to work with, and you can press the slash key. It's just next to the Shift in a Windows machine as far as I know. So you can just press slash and now you can work. This is called local view. If you want to see other things, you can press that slash button again. So local view, global view, go to edit mode, SY in our case, make it very slim, just like that, press 1, SZ, I don't have the exact dimensions of this computer, say this is fine. Go out of edit mode in object mode. Let's create a cylinder, one cylinder, go to edit mode, make it very small and press 1. You should rotate it along Y, but you pressed 1, I hope. You can rotate it by just typing a number, R. In this case, we should rotate it along Y-axis, as you can see, R, Y, right? Because I'd like to create this hinge or whatever we say. So R, Y, 90. Isn't it clever? I think it's very clever. And SX a little, just like that. I don't know, maybe that. And S to make it smaller. SX. And let's put it lower, because as you can see, it's lower. And now that's fine. 1 or 3. Let's make it a bit bigger. GY, put it about here. 1 SY, no, X, to make it a bit smaller along X-axis. So Shift Z to go from this view. I think that's fine. And now we will create this something which holds it. We can create that by just selecting this, press 1 or press 3, go to edit mode, select everything, and we can duplicate stuff by pressing Shift D. This is the first time I think we are duplicating things. Now I want to rotate it along which axis? X-axis. But I want to rotate it exactly 90 degrees. So you press, for example, even if you're looking not from orthographic, this correct view, you can view it from anywhere, and you can press R and X to rotate around X-axis, but you can type a number, R, X, 90, to rotate with exact decrease. So put them here. You can hold down Shift for more precise movements. SX, make it smaller. Shift Z. Actually, I'm not sure, but I think these are the same length or width, I would say. This is it. 3. I should bring these edges closer. I don't know if you look from here. GX. Yeah, no, Y. So they should come here. These should go there. Just like that. I think that's fine. I don't know, maybe this length, but they're a bit thinner, and I think they should go a bit further away from the computer, just like that. And let's select the top. Remember, I'm in Shift Z. I'm not in solid view. I'm in wireframe view or X-ray view. Shift Z. Remember, if you're in solid view, you cannot select all. As you can see, you only select one part. Shift Z, select everything. GZ a little. Now let's create this connecting thing. Go to edit mode, Control R, left click, move it. If you accidentally click left click again, you can select all, GY to move to here, Control B to duplicate. Let's come closer a little, Control V, but turn the scroll wheel until you have only one, just like that. And select the top face, this face. You can select the face by coming here. So you can select this, Shift Z to look from solid view, 3. And now we can extrude and we can move it, GY, just like that. But as you can see, it's a bit too thick. Shift Z, and now we are in vertex select mode. Just select these vertices, hold down Shift, select these. Now you can move them a little, GY, just like that. And I think we should move these also, GY a little, GY, move them away, GY. Maybe that's good. Now Shift Z to look from. I'm not going to rotate this just yet. I could have rotated it just like that. Control L, just like that. But I'm not going to do that because we should do a few other things before we do that. So now I can put this on top of the desk and make it smaller. But as you can see, if I move it, I will leave this hinge behind this part. So how can I make them into one object? Although it's not a good idea to make them as one object, in this case we will do that. So select everything. I can say select everything and Control J. It means join. Now I joined all of the parts to one object. I wouldn't recommend doing this all the time. You can do this only after you have finished everything, and only when you know what you're doing. Especially for beginners, I wouldn't recommend doing that. Instead, I will show you something. Control Z to go back. You can do this. You can select the main object, whatever is the main object that you have. For example, if it is a car, the chassis of the car. If it is a gun, the main part that holds all the other parts together, you can select that part. So the main part, select the main part. Oh, sorry. You should select that main part as the last object. So select whatever small objects you have, and finally Shift select that main part and parent all other smaller parts to that bigger parent, which means all other smaller parts will be children of that big part, and the big part, if you move the big part, the children will follow. So to do that, you should select the small part and Shift select the last, the biggest, the main part, and press Control P and object. Or sometimes if things move around when you do that, you should select object, keep transform. In this case, I will just select object. So now if I move the main part, the small part will also move. If I rotate, if I scale, all the time they move together. Press 1. Now I can put it somewhere on the table, and I think Shift Z, these are a bit too thick. GY, just a bit thinner. Let's make it a bit thinner. So now let's unhide the table. Do you remember how we unhide? Alt H, it is not working. Why? Because we are in local view. Do you remember how we went into local view and how we can go out of local view? By pressing that slash button just next to the right shift button on your normal keyboard. So now let's press this, select this. Remember, you don't have to select this small part because we parented GZ to move it on the table. But it's huge, it's too big. Let's make it smaller. You don't have to select this small part, make it a bit more smaller, GZ, and put it by holding down Shift while you're moving. You can more precisely place anything anywhere. Shift B and draw a line to come closer. GZ. You can put it just like that. You don't have to have very, very precise movements here. I think it's a bit too small now. Let's make it a bit bigger. That's good, I think. Shift D, Shift B, come closer. GZ, hold down Shift for more precise movements. We can make the legs also smaller because I don't like them. Go to edit mode of the table, Shift Z and press 7. I'll show you a trick which is a bit advanced, but let's do it in a more simple way. If I want to make this the legs smaller, I should bring this edge closer to this edge, right? Select this edge, these edges, and also the side of the leg. I press 7, Shift select these, and you should scale along y-axis. I hope you know how to do this. SY, and bring it a bit closer, just like that. And now we should do the same with these. Select these, Shift select these. Remember, I'm in wireframe view. Shift Z, Shift Z. You should be in wireframe view for this to work. And SX, that's fine, I think. Shift Z. Now the legs are a bit smaller and a bit better, I would say. Now let's create that. So while making the chair, we will learn a few other things. So let's create that chair. We need a cylinder, but we can use this menu, adjust last operation menu. When we add new objects, we can modify their properties. For example, vertices, I think 24 is enough. If you can bring it down, it's great. Or 16, I think that's also fine. That's fine. So now let's go to edit mode, make it smaller. Do you remember how to work in local view so that these are hidden and I only see the chair? So you can press that slash button or question mark next to right side shift button on your normal Windows keyboard. So 1, this will be front view. Go to edit mode, make it smaller. So I'm going to make something like this. Let me show you. So I will quickly draw, draft, and I will delete it. So something like this. This will be the chairs and that, something like this. And there will be a padding here to sit, and there will be a padding here to lean. So this will be the chair. So you can delete the note from here. So let's go front view, go to edit mode, make it smaller, put it right here, make it even smaller, and SZ. this is one side, this will be one side of the chair, and so to make the other side, if you learned mirror modifier, we can create a mirror modifier along this axis. So now SZ, I will show you something very interesting. So and 3, I will duplicate this, Shift D and R90. Remember, I am looking from side view by pressing 3. Shift Z, it is better to work in wireframe view. Let's put it right about here. Remember, this should be the middle, and the distance, preferably the distance should be the same to these from the middle. So it's something to be careful. That's fine, I think. And Shift D to create, and Z to create one here. I don't know, maybe select these, GY to make them a bit longer, and select this, Control L to select everything that's connected. I don't know, maybe Shift D, R90. I'm looking from above, so it's by pressing 7. And let's delete this, because I'd like to, if you remember from the last video about mirror modifier, Control L, G, and I can just touch them to each other. By default they are not touching, right? They are not snapping to each other. So let's turn on clipping, and now G, I can snap it just like that, and I will just put it about here. Right, that's it. And one thing which is important, I should delete the face between these snapped parts. So let's X and delete this face, because remember, there is a face here. If you go to face selection, Shift Z, there is a face. This face is, usually you should delete the faces between the connecting points with mirror modifier when you connect things with mirror modifier. And now select one thing from here, and do you remember how to select the whole thing which are connected to each other? By pressing Control L. And now let me Shift D and R90. Remember, I'm going to connect them later, connect these parts later. I will show you a good trick for that. So that's fine. I think that's okay. And I will just duplicate this, select one thing. No, don't select this, select only this, and Control L to select everything else. Look from front, GZ, and put it about here. Bring this down a little because this is a bit too high, I think. That is fine. Now let me show you how you can quickly connect these parts. For that, press 3, for example, select these, and we have a nice option in here, Edge menu. You can press Control E for Edge menu. This is the first time we're looking at Edge menu, I think, in this little course. So there is a nice option in Blender which is called Bridge Edge Loops. You can bridge them just like that, and open this Adjust Last Operation panel, and you can increase the number of cuts here, just like that. Maybe a bit more, and you can change the smoothness value just like that. This is a really nice feature. I love it. I use it a lot. And oh, sorry, we forgot about duplicating this for some reason. Control L, Shift D, Z, just Z, press D, and Shift B, come closer, GZ, I think it should go down a little like that. And now let's connect these, Control E and Bridge Edge Loops. The same thing, number of cuts is 5, and the smoothness is remembered 0.6, I think, here. And the same thing up here, Control. Remember, I'm not selecting everything. I'm just selecting these two edge loops. Control B. Oh, sorry, not Control B. Control E. Bridge edge loops. You can find that from here too. You don't have to press Control E. 5. Here. Edge menu. Bridge. More cuts. And right here. Edge. Bridge. More cuts. 4 was enough too, but I just, for some reason, I opted for 5. So yeah, that's a nice place to, you can sit on here. So let's create a cube. Wow, it's a really big cube. Make it smaller. Look from the side view. Select this cube, select everything. Press 3 to look from side. SZ, G, put it right here. SY to make it bigger. Look from front. SY, no, sorry, X. And don't forget to turn this off and just put it down. So, I don't know, I think we should look at a reference image. GZ, put it down a little, go out of edit mode. That's fine, I think. Look from the side view, select this, shift select this padding, go to edit mode. Remember, you can go to edit mode of all select objects, shift Z and select everything here. GZ to put it a bit down by selecting everything here. Remember, I'm not selecting these parts, only the top parts, and don't do something like that. It will screw things up just like that. Or don't forget to select something from here and it will break this and create a terrible thing. So remember, if you want to move them down, select everything right here. I think it's a bit too much. Just like that. And now I will show you a really good modifier. Go to modifiers, create subdivision surface modifier, increase the resolution. Now let's go to edit mode, Control R, turn the scroll wheel, left click, SX, and yeah, we will do the same here. Control R, turn the scroll wheel to make 2 cuts, left click, SY. I don't know, maybe that's a nice padding. That's fine, I think. And maybe select everything SY a little, just like that. I think that's better. And now 3, go to edit mode, select everything, Shift D, R90, oh sorry, R90. Enter. And now if you press SZ, this is not a good idea to press SZ. Instead, Shift Z and select this top part and bring it down just like that. Don't press SZ. Control L, G, and put it right about here. Go out of edit mode. So that's something. Maybe that's a nice chair to sit on. And I'd like to do something. I'll show you something very interesting or rather useful. Select this. You don't have to press 1. Just go to edit mode. Select everything by pressing A. And whenever you have these tube-shaped stuff, as you can see, these are cylindrical or tube shapes. Let's say cylinder shape. You can press Alt S to make them thicker, just like that, or thinner. So I'd like to make them a bit thicker than before, just like that. Remember, these vertices shouldn't be too close to each other. Shift B to come closer. These shouldn't touch each other. So I think this thickness is much, it looks better. At least to my eyes, it looks a bit better than before. Now we're working in local view. Do you know how to go out of local view? By pressing slash. Wow, this chair is too small. So now we can make the chair bigger. If you select this and make it bigger, only it will be made bigger. You can select both by shift selecting and scale it up, but a better way is parenting. Do you remember how you can parent this softer part to this metal part? So that when you scale the metal part, the soft part will also scale. So to do this, if you remember, you select the soft part and lastly select the metal part. Remember, I'm shift selecting. Select this and shift select the mother or father, rather parent, and press Ctrl P. And you can press select object or keep transform object. So let's select object and let's scale it up. And now you can see both will scale together. And now you can press R, Z 180 degrees. So let's start with the keyboard. I don't know what kind of keyboard I will make, but it will be pretty simple. So cube again, and go to local view by pressing the slash button. Go to edit mode, SZ to make it smaller. Look from the top by pressing 7, SY. I think this is a nice shape for the starting point for the keyboard, and let's make it much less thicker or even thinner, let's say, or just a bit thicker so that it has some depth. So that's fine. Now let's create those keys. So first of all, I can create another cube, but I don't want to. So you can go to edit mode. You can use the same raw material, shift DZ, and you can use it as keys. But I'll show you something. While it is selected, if it is not selected, if you deselect it by mistake, you can select one part. And do you remember how to select all other part, everything else which is connected to these vertices? I hope you remember. It's Ctrl L. And now I can separate this object, this piece of the mesh or object, to another its own object. Right now, if I go out of object mode, these both are one object. But if I go to edit mode and select these, Ctrl L, I can separate this to its own object. So it is by pressing P. Separate, as you can see, selection by material by loose parts. So I can select selection or loose parts because these two parts are not connected, they are loose, but I will just select selection, which is why I selected. So go out of edit mode now. Now you can see this is another object. This is another. Do you remember from previous videos how to bring its origin point to itself? It's easy. In object mode, remember, just right click, set origin to geometry. So go to edit mode now, select everything, 7 from top, SX and SY again, Shift Z. This is nicer now, as to make this smaller, maybe not so small. Put it right about here. Go out of edit mode, right click, set origin to geometry. So it is not necessary, but it's good practice to bring the origin to the geometry all the time, because I'm going to work in object mode. So while this is selected, I can go to edit mode and shift D and Y, or no, X to duplicate it, but I'm going to do it in a different way. Go out of edit mode, Control Z, Shift Z. In object mode, I can add a modifier, which is array. Array modifier, if you remember from previous videos, it just duplicates whatever it is attached to, right? Shift Z. And now if I increase the factor along x-axis, it goes this way, but I would like it to go this way. Or I can simply GX, put it here, right? And 0.2 maybe. I think it's a bit too close, 0.4, 1.4. That's fine. Now I can increase the number of keys very easily. And I can just 0.6, oh no, 0.5 is fine, I think, for my purpose. GY, oh no, X a little, just like that. Now we have keys on this keyboard, right? Also, I will create more keys in object mode. Remember, I'm in object mode. Shift D, Y. I will create more keys, but these keys will be different shape. Go to edit mode, select this, GY. These will be rather square shape. And now I can duplicate Shift D, Y, just like that, but I don't want to. I will just go out of edit mode. I'll just create or add another array, add generate array. But now I will not move along X, it will be 0. I will move along Y, as you can see here. So it will be minus 1.4, let's say, and I will increase the number. Is it okay? I think it's fine, yeah. And now, where is this long key, which we always have in keyboards? Well, I will create that. For that, I should apply the modifier. Let me apply the modifier, second array modifier, and I can go to edit mode. Actually, let me apply the first array modifier, apply it. Remember, after you have applied, all of them are separate pieces of object. So all of them are one object, but they have separate pieces now. Now I can just delete these two, Control L, X, I don't know, maybe I will just, yeah, I will just delete these two. Control L, X, delete vertices, and I will select this, GY, no X, and hold down Shift for more precise calculations. I think that's looking nice. But I should have done something before I created this. Let me undo everything that I did just now. While I have these array modifiers, I will do something. So let's go to edit mode, Shift Z. Remember, all of them are now one shape because I'm non-destructively working, right? So I can make them circular. I mean, not all circle, but much more circular than now. I will select all these edges, only edge, these 4 edges, shift select them, and press Ctrl B to make them circular. Let's look from the top. Remember, when I'm doing something like that, and if I want to undo, I shouldn't press left click, but I should press right click to undo that. Ctrl B, turn the scroll wheel, just like that. I think that's better, much better, yeah. And I don't know, maybe I should have more of these, or that's fine, maybe that's fine. But they're too far away from each other, I think. So let's open that and Shift Z, maybe make them closer to each other, like that. 1.32, and one more row, GY, no X, just like that. And we will do the same with this. I always get it wrong. So I think the top row is okay, but I will make them a bit circular too. Go to edit mode, select these edges. I'm jumping from edit mode to object mode without saying. It's just by pressing. And now I can apply these mirror modifiers. No, sorry, array modifiers. The general rule is to start applying the top modifier first, not the bottom modifier. Start from the top and go one by one. Now I can just look from the top, go to edit mode, select these, maybe these two, Control L, X, delete. This one too, Control L, X, delete. And now let's go to vertex select mode and select these vertices. Do not do it like that. GX, SX, it will screw things up. Don't do it. Control Z, just select this part, and GX to come to here. That's it. Go out of edit mode. Now you have a long, nice spacebar key. So, and I will make this, go to edit mode, the Shift Z 1, or just edge, select this, Shift select these 4 edges here, just like that, and make them circular 2 by pressing Control B. That's more Apple-like design, right? I think. Now, do you remember how we can, if I just move this, the keys do not move, so I should parent them. Now, by now, you already know how to do that, I think. Select this, Shift select this, and finally select the base of the keyboard and press Control P and set parent to object. Now, if I move this, everything moves along with it. Now I should go out of local view by pressing slash key, and I can just select my keyboard, press 3, G, and put it right here. But I would say there is a little mistake or a little problem with this keyboard because it's very flat. The keyboards are usually not so flat. Let's go back, I should select all these and then go to local view. So now 3, let's bring in a cylinder with less vertices, I think 16, that's fine. Go to edit mode, make them smaller, even smaller is SZ a bit taller, smaller, SZ a bit taller. Go out of edit mode. Now R, Y, because I would like to rotate it around Y axis just like that. R, Y, 90. Go to edit mode, select everything, SX, just like that, GY, put it about here. I don't know, it's not particularly or the same as Apple, it's a bit different. GZ, put it here, go out of edit mode, select this, Shift select the base part in object mode. Remember, I'm selecting them in object mode, Control P and object. Now this is the parent, the space is the parent for everything. Now I can just rotate it like that. GZ, I will try to put it in a good position. Rotate a little. GZ. Remember that it is still touching the table. GZ. The next thing will be the mouse. Let's create the mouse. For that, again, we need a cube. Go to local view, go to edit mode, SZ, 7, S to make it smaller, SX, I think that's a nice starting shape for a mouse, I don't know, 3, SZ, that is a nice starting shape, I would say. So now for this, what we can do, I don't know how I can make it in a beautiful way. So let's go out of edit mode. Let's apply subdivision surface modifier so it's more like circular, right? Just like that. But one thing that I really want is to have one line in the middle of the mouse. Remember that. If I increase it, I have one line here. So this is important. Now I can just go to side view by pressing 3, go to edit mode, Control R, and do it like that. Maybe that, just like that. And 1, Control R, 1, I don't know, maybe GY a little. And I will just select this part, this edge, maybe just this edge. Remember, I'm not in I'm not in wireframe view. Shift Z, I should go to wireframe view just like that and then select it. and maybe do something like this. Or I think that's not a great idea. Let's move it a bit down just like that, and this down like that too. Go out of edit mode, Shift Z. I think that's looking nice. This mouse, I like this mouse. And now what we can do is to apply this subdivision surface modifier, because I need this to be a real shape. Now Shift Z, and I select this lower part and just delete it. Just delete these vertices. Instead, I will have a flat surface down here. Alt select. I hope you remember alt selecting. And now I have two ways to fill this big hole. One, I hope you remember, how do we fill these holes? Do you remember from last lesson? By pressing F. F is filling holes, just like that. But that's not the best thing in the world to do. Here is another thing. We will see which one works better. In face menu, we have grid fill, which tries to fill this flat shape with grid, with multiple polygons. Let's do that. And I think this is much better fill. Go out of edit mode. I hope we have done the job. So that's a nice flat surface right here. Now we will create the clickable parts. So first of all, I should go to edit mode, face menu, face select mode, Shift Z, and select these faces. I think these faces are fine. These are enough. Only these faces. And now I can separate them from the rest by pressing Y. If I press Y, now this part is separate. It is just cutting. And now I can do this. Look, I can hide the selection by pressing H, or I can hide the parts which are not selecting by pressing Shift H. So I press Shift H. In Blender it works all the time, and I select this part and just press Y again to separate these. Now go to Edge View, Edge Select Mode, select these edges, and do you remember how to slide these edges along other edges? I talked about that in the last video. So press G twice, G again to move them a little. And also these edges, G, I can move them a little like that, and press Alt, press this, or just press that, G, just separate them a little. But I think it's a bit too much, right? Select this edge. Select this edge maybe. So GX to move them, but now it's not aligning very well. Shift Z, Control Z, I'm sorry. So can we do SX? No, because they are almost touching each other. So Alt select one part, and let's select this part, Control L, and hide it. 7. Now select this and GX a little. I think this is too open, right? I think it's a bit too open, this part especially. So select these two faces, Control L, Shift H to hide everything else, 3. So 1 to go to vertex select mode, select these vertices, Shift Z, select these, GY a little to move, go out of edit mode. I think that's better. Go to edit mode, 3, select these, GZ a little. I don't want to take too much time here, and see how it looks. I think it looks better. But now we need the scroll wheel, which is important, right? So Shift A, sorry, cylinder, go to edit mode, make it much smaller, 3, Shift Z, SZ, Go out of edit mode, R by 90. Remember, make it smaller, put it here, put it a bit down here, make it a little bigger, Shift Z, I think that's fine. Go to edit mode, SX to make it a bit bigger, Shift Z, and now by going to face select mode, I will select this face and Control B a little. Let's have less cuts, only one cut, just like that. Go out of edit mode, I think that's alright. And now we can do this. We can go to edit mode, one edge loop here by Control R and leave it here. Control R, left click, right click, and Alt select this loop, and Shift Alt select this loop. 7 GG. I know I'm doing a bit more. These might be a bit more difficult for you. Control R and left click, right click, Control R, left click, it doesn't matter. And we have, you don't have to do this this part, I think. Control R, you don't have to do this part actually. And face select mode, select this face, Shift select these, and delete these faces. Face delete. I just created this open area for this. And I think that's a nice mouse, but I want to show you one last thing. Select this mouse, I don't like this very thin style, and go to modifiers. Let's experiment with solidify modifier, and now they are solid, as you can see. They are not very thin, and we can increase the solidify amount here a bit, increase it, Shift Z to see how thick they are. They're very thick now, and I think this is a little better way of creating stuff. So go to edit mode. I think we need to open them. Select this, Shift Z, 7, GG, and select this, Control select, hold down Control and select this line, and GG to move them, or just GX to move them away a little. Shift Z, I think that's a little better. Let's bring it down 0.02. Local view by pressing slash. Now let's move this mouse up. Remember, we need to parent this small middle mouse button. Shift select the mouse, Control P, object, select this object 1 and 3, and put this gigantic mouse here. It looks so scary next to this computer, so let's make it much smaller. Now one last thing that we are going to create is the cactus just next to the computer. Let's create a cylinder, but this time the cylinder will have more resolution, like 24 for example. That's better resolution. Go to local view, go to edit mode, 3, Shift Z, select this bottom part, make it smaller. I think that's fine. And select maybe this top part. I hope you remember I from last lessons. E to extrude down. And I don't think we need to extrude this much. I don't know. Maybe here, and S to make it smaller, just like that. So now I'd like to make this part a little bigger. Control R, move it, left click and move, and go to face select. Can you select all the faces, face loop here, all the faces around this bucket? I hope you can. By pressing Alt, you can select all the faces. Alt E to extrude along normals. I hope you remember this from past videos. Just like that. A little, yeah. That's fine, I think. And now we can create the cactus. To be honest, I don't know what cactus is like, but I will try to make something which looks good. Let's find a reference image of a cactus from the internet and bring it here. So I found a few images and I brought this one. Yeah, it seems like there are so many types of cactus. I didn't know that because I just don't use any cactus on my in front of my computer. Shift Z, G, Z, S, and let's actually go to vertex select, Alt select these vertices S to make it a bit larger, just like that. And let's create these rather strange shapes. So Shift A. I don't even know how to make them. Let's try to make them with a cube. Go to edit mode, SZ, or maybe SX, this shape. Go out of edit mode, add a subdivision surface modifier, GZ, increase, go to edit mode, SY a little, look from the side, Shift Z, select this part, S, to make it smaller. I think that's a nice shape. So go to edit mode, select everything, Shift D, make it smaller, put it here. Now let's go to edit mode of the bucket and select this bottom face, X, and delete this face, only face. And let's go to edge select, vertex select, Alt select these vertices, and let's try to fill them in a grid fashion. So that's better because I want to make some imperfections here. So let's select this, activate the proportional editing, GZ. I said that proportional editing is not used very often, but contrary to what I said, I use that often. So select this cactus, shift select this bucket, Control P object. Now this bucket is the parent of this cactus. So now hit slash to go out of local view 3. Yeah, that's everything that we wanted to model in this little course. You can, but I highly encourage you to make something else, maybe a table lamp, maybe something else. Create with curves, you can create some cables, or yeah, whatever you want, whatever you can think of, just create. And the model, the project, a bit more compelling than this. It's too simple, I know. So anyway, this is what I wanted to show you. See you in the next lesson, where we will learn how to give colors and some materials to these objects. In this lesson, we are going to learn all the basics about materials in Blender. And after I have introduced the material properties here and a few things about these materials, we will jump right to that project that we made in the last video and give materials to that project. So now, first of all, where you find material properties. How do you know what kind of material this object has? So you should come here to properties. You can find properties from here. Here is the material properties, but it is not always visible if you don't select the object. For example, if you select camera, it is not here because camera doesn't have materials. But if you select mesh objects, 3D models, you will have material properties here. And this is the default material where you automatically which you automatically have when you open Blender, and it's called just material. You can rename it by clicking here and say, for example, test or something, whatever you want. And this object currently has only one material, which means you can give only one property, one kind of color or property. But you can add more materials here. But first of all, before adding more materials, let's try to change the color here to blue. And there is nothing changed here, because in order to work with materials, to see the effect of materials, we need to go to either material preview or rendered view. If you remember, we press Shift Z to look to go to the wireframe view, Shift Z. This is a default view, which is called solid, and it's this. Remember, we talked about this a little. And the next two are material preview and rendered view. So in rendered view, it's the final rendered view which calculates all the lights and everything, but we will usually work with in material view preview when we are working material, when we are creating materials. So now you can see the blue color here. Now let's quickly talk more about these things. We can add more materials, plus add. Actually, with this plus we create a new slot, and inside the slot in this slot we can create new material here, and let's call it second. And let's go, if I change something from here, if I change it to, for example, nice red color, there is nothing changed here because this is taking over and applied to all the faces of this cube. And you can apply the materials, different materials, to different faces of the object. If you create the material first, it will be applied automatically to all the faces of this object. If you want to apply any other material to any other face, any face here, you can go to edit mode, go to face select mode, select the desired face, select the necessary material, and click assign in edit mode. You can do this in edit mode, remember, not in object mode, assign. And go out of object edit mode. Now you have this material applied here. If you change it, it will change automatically in material preview, this view. By the way, you can change the views by pressing Z, solid, wireframe, material preview, and rendered. Now what else do we have here? In order to see the details, we need to select the material. And you learn how to add materials. You can remove materials from here. If you press this minus, you can remove the slot along with this material. But the removed materials will always be here in this list. And if there is a 0 next to the name, it means this material will get deleted after you have closed Blender. And if you want to keep that, you can bring this, you can create a new slot, you can apply that, and just click this shield icon, which means it will be protected. Even if you don't use it, it will have F, which means it has a fake user. So anyway, let's jump here, and here we only deal with 3 things in this video. So base color, just base color, metallic, how much metal this material is, and roughness, how much rough or smooth or shiny this material is. This is basically it. And let's go and change or give materials to our objects in the project that we made in the last lesson. Before I start to talk about materials, I'd like to show you one extra thing, which is getting rid of these faceted, boxy, or these kind of polygonal view. These should look smooth, right? For example, here, this should be a nice smooth metal part, right? So let me show you how to do it. It's very, very simple. Just one click solution. So just right click and shade smooth. That's it. Select this, right click, shade smooth. I should have showed this maybe earlier, but it's better than late. So let's select this. So here's the little rule. There are 2 options here. If you right click, you have shade smooth and you have shade smooth by angle. What do they mean? If your object has no sharp angles, it's just like these smooth pads. It's a shape like this, organic shape. You can just select shade smooth. But if the object has a combination of smooth parts and sharp edges, like these smooth edges and sharp edges, if it has a combination of these 2, you should select shade smooth by angle. So Blender will automatically detect the angle. For example, this is a wider angle, this is sharper angle, and it shows sharp. It shows the sharper angle sharp and wider angle smooth. So it's as simple as that. You can change the angle from here and see the result for yourself. Shade smooth this, and let's do everything like that. Shade smooth by angle for this, shade smooth by angle, and shade smooth. And also I will just select this, go to edit mode, select these edges, these 4 edges, these 4 edges, these 4 edges, these edges, and just go ahead and Control B with a few cuts. So turn the scroll wheel for more cuts. Just check it with a reference. So that's fine, I think. And you will also shade smooth this by angle, which is much nicer looking computer now. You can also do it here, but I wouldn't recommend doing that in that kind of place. For example, you can select this edge and Control B to kind of make a sharper angle here. And you will redo this shade smooth by angle, but I basically wouldn't recommend that. I think I need to get rid of these sharp angles. Actually, you can come here to edge and clear sharp, just clear sharp, and go out of edit mode. And I think it's looking nice, but I created this polygon which doesn't have 4 sides. If you remember from the last video, you should generally avoid having faces which has more than 4 sides. So let's do that. Go out of edit mode, sharp smooth by angle. Let's get rid of these sharp edges. I'm probably going too deep now, and you should probably never bother doing this, but generally looks a bit nicer. So now we can start to talk about materials. So let's go. First of all, materials, let's get rid of this. Maybe let's go back to outliner. So let's select this table, for example, and apply that material. You can select that material to apply it and change the color to something like brown, right? Darker brown, reddish, darker brown, just like that. But you don't see it here. You don't see the effect because now we are in solid view. To see all of that, you can press one of them. For example, this is wireframe, this is solid, but the rest, the other two are, first is material view and the second is render view. So in render view, all the lights and everything is calculated, as you can see. In material view preview, now you see only the material effects, and by default you don't see any light interactions here. So, and you have this render, and we will talk about this in the next video, as I said. So now these two objects, as you can see, are using one material, and this is called this material, and you can rename this brown leather or something, right? And you can get rid of the material. You can unplug this material from here by pressing on this minus button, and we have removed the material from this table. And let's create this new material called maybe a white table, right? So, and it's just white, or let's make it a bit like milky color. I don't know, creamy color, right? I like this color now. And let's create a metal material. So let's create new material, call it metal parts or something. And here we can increase the metallic. You can see the color, base color, and metallic. And let's increase the metallic. And this looks more like a metal, right? But it's not very shiny, right? It's like, I don't know, frosted look it has. In order to have this a lot shinier, you should turn off this close to 0.2, for example, is a nice number, or 0.12 is a very nice number for metal. So this is shiny metal. Now let's try to give a material to this. I don't know, maybe we will call it ceramic pot. So, and let's change the color to something like this, a bit darker. So, and let's create a new material to this cactus. And cactus is usually kind of, I don't know. And let's change these to metal, maybe some colorful, or maybe some, I don't know. Let's computer metal. And we will increase the metallic to 0.6 maybe, but usually it's better to have 100% metal. if it is a metal. So, and bring this roughness down to 0.4, not extremely shiny like that, because it's not realistic. 0.4 maybe, or even 0.5 is fine. So, and you can change the color to something like bluish. And let's apply the same color to the computer itself. So it's computer metal, but the screen should be different, right? The screen must be, so let's go to edit mode, select this face, and press I. And as you can see, you have this nice, but this is not great because Apple computers have a kind of line here. So how do we do that? It's not great, but let's do something. Let's press I to have this, and let's select this edge and control select this edge, and Blender will select everything in between. And let's bring it up. Oh, sorry, turn this off. GZ. I told you it's not ideal because, as you can see, we have very stretched edges, faces, edges, and everything here, which is not great. But this is, I still don't like it. So let's undo everything, and I will show you how to do it a bit better. Control R to cut an edge here. Control R. As you can see, Shift C, it cannot cut an edge all the way around, right? Because this is why I told you you should definitely avoid having faces with so many or more than 4 sides. This face, for example, now has a lot of sides. As you can see, I have selected 24 vertices and 24 edges. So this face has 24 sides, which is not ideal sides. So let's create an edge from here. I will show you how to fix that. We will not fix the edge number or side number. We will just create another edge here. So J. You can join different edges with J, J again, and now you have this edge loop all the way around. GZ to bring it here. I think this is a nice place. Shift Z. And now you can select this face and press I to create an inner, and you can select this edge, this vertex, and this vertex, and you can bevel that. If you press Ctrl B, nothing happens. Something happens, but this is not what you want. You should Ctrl Shift B to create this beveled vertex. So this is a nice bevel now. Let's select these 2 vertices and these 2 vertices. Ctrl Shift B rather, and create this. I think this is not too bad. And let's select this face and create a new material, assign it, new, black. So something like this. Assign, go to material preview, and you can see right here. And it's a bit better. It's a bit better. Not the best thing, but it's a bit better than before. 0.2. But it's definitely better than having a lot of stretched face there. So it's again a bit modeling and fixing some models. You will do this in many situations. You fix your models, you delete something, you redo it again. Let's apply this. I forgot to shade smooth this. Metal parts. I like this metal look. I don't know. Maybe this is better. Maybe this is not the best thing. And the mouse. Let's apply the same material. Computer metal. Now we have given materials to our objects. Remember these things. You can go ahead and check out this video right here on this channel, which is called Learn Everything About Materials in Blender, so that you can learn a lot more than this about materials in Blender. In this video, we are going to talk about UVs and texturing in Blender. We will talk about textures, how to apply project textures onto our 3D models. But we're going to learn about fundamentals. If you want to learn everything detailed about texturing in Blender, UV unwrapping, all that, texture painting. You can go ahead and watch these videos. I have a full playlist of, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 videos about texturing in Blender. It's called Texturing Basics in Blender, and you can learn a lot of things there. And also you'll learn more about textures in this video, which is called Learning Everything About Materials in Blender. So please watch them if you need more information. Other than that, you can watch this video and learn the basics about UV unwrapping and texturing. First of all, what are textures? Textures are just image files that you can get from internet, or even you can create your own textures inside of Blender or some specialized software like Photoshop, and save an image file and bring into Blender and apply or project those textures on top of these 3D models. So right now we are only using simple colors and some metallic and roughness properties here, but we have no textures. And in this video I will apply textures to this leather parts of this chair. Now let's go ahead and apply textures to this chair. First of all, before we can apply, we need to find some textures, right? You can download some great textures online. There are some free textures, free websites. This is an amazing website for free textures. It's called polyhaven.com. This used to be called HDRI Haven, if I'm not mistaken, because you could only find HDRIs there. But now you can find textures, models. Everything is free, and the textures, everything is high quality and great. You can support them, and it has a Blender add-on too. As you can see here, we don't need the add-on now. We will just download some textures. So let's search for leather, and we have a few amazing textures here. Let's select maybe this brown leather. So we can download right here in 4K resolution with a blend file or in zip file. And you can also select what you want. So let's download in maybe in 2K resolution, not 4K, and there is less. The size is a bit smaller, right? 20 megabytes. So let's go ahead and download in blend file. Let's download in zip file, not blend file, just a zip file, and you can select the file formats too, as you can see. And you don't need blend file, you don't need GLTF file, you don't have to worry about any of that. Just do what I'm doing now, or you can just download everything, it doesn't matter. I just want to save some memory. Normal, maybe PNG files, because these are less in megabytes. So yeah, let's go ahead and download that. After you have downloaded the zip file, you should unzip. You can right click and extract all, or with any program you can unzip. And now you can find the textures here. And textures by default are just these square shaped images, right? And here you have this color, and you have some other images. I will explain them in a moment. Now in Blender I can select this object and apply textures right here. But there is a big but, right? There's a big but here. I'm about to show you a completely different workspace, which is called shading. Let's go to shading and let's talk about these things. Again, if you want to learn more, I'm just trying to keep it simple, but if you want to learn more, you can watch the video about materials in Blender, and I gave a lot more details there. So here we have a different type of representation of each material. If you come here to material properties, you have the same thing as here. You have base color, metallic, roughness, IR, and a lot of other things. Emission, sheen, coat, like emission, sheen, coat, everything is here, and it's plugged in. But here we have a different representation, and it's called nodes, node-based representation. And we can bring in textures here, and it's much nicer, much more convenient to plug in and check everything. Here you can do it by pressing these little dots, and you can come here to image texture and select the texture, and you can do the same thing here by pressing Shift A, texture, image texture, and you can open the file that you have downloaded just and unzipped. Or rather, you can just drag and drop textures right inside here, just like that. And let's plug it in and see what happens. By default, it's so huge. It's so huge. And the reason is, there are a lot of reasons. So I'll show you how to correct that. So there are a few nodes in this system. This is a node system. There are a lot of nodes which control how texture is projected on top of 3D models. Remember, we are projecting our textures on top of these 3D models. And Blender is calculating on its own, trying his best to make this chair look great. So let's go and bring in some textures. Shift A, and you can search for coordinate, and it's texture coordinates. But you don't usually directly connect it to textures. You have another node which is called mapping. And by default, Blender uses something called UV mapping, and I will talk about it in a moment. So Blender is using this. Let's connect this to this. It's a lot of things to grasp. I know if you're completely new to the system, it's a lot of things to understand now. So go ahead and watch my videos about materials and texturing if you need more detailed information. So let's plug this into here. Nothing changed because Blender automatically uses this. I haven't changed anything. Blender automatically uses this UV projection. Let's unplug that. Let's plug that. But we can use other projecting methods like generated. If you use generated, it's a bit better, right? Smaller and nicer. But this looks horrible. This looks disgusting, as you can see here. Because now Blender is just projecting the image from top to bottom. Blender is putting the image right here, right? And projecting this way, just like that. And we can change this. We can change this and try to tell Blender so that it tries to project the images in a kind of box style. From here, here, and here, from everywhere towards this image, just like that. And also from different sides too. Box model. So how do we do that? Let's get rid of these nodes. We can do it from here, not flat, but box. And now, as you can see, it's much nicer, as you can see. We just don't need to worry about that. It's much better, right? So now let's go ahead and talk about other textures. We have so many textures here, and I will tell you the most important ones. There are 4 textures which are essential in any project or in any material rather, right? It's base color, it's metallic, roughness, and normal. These 4, remember, this is a golden rule. You always need these 4, and these 4 are usually more than enough to create realistic materials. It's called PBR, physically based materials, or physically based rendering. So metallic, because leather is not metal, it doesn't have metallic properties, we don't need that texture. So we have only 3. Roughness, how shiny or how rough it is. We can control this with a texture. And we can control this magic texture. We can plug in this magic texture, which is called normal. I talked more about that in a video about materials, so you can watch. I will probably mention that video 100 times in this lesson. So let's bring in roughness and normal. So where is roughness here? I think it's roughness because it's called R-O-U-G-H. R-O-U-G-H. So let's plug this into roughness. And this blue, or rather, I don't know, maybe violet color. And we have 2 types of normal, DX and GL. GL is for Blender, remember. DX is for, I believe, it's for example, Unreal Engine. So it's one of them is OpenGL, one of them is DirectX. It's just a calculation method, or I don't know what it is. I'm not very sure about that. So yeah, now, as you can see, it looks terrible because we're not using the same coordinate system. Let's plug this here. You can do that, remember? And also we need to change something because it doesn't look great here. We need to change something from here. Box to flat to box. Now our leather is looking much better, as you can see, much more realistic. And we can make it even more realistic by plugging in this normal. Shift A and a vector normal map. You can just search for normal map because normal maps, as you can see, it's yellow, which indicates its color information, and this one is, again, for me it's blue. This blue color indicates normal vector information. So we cannot directly connect this to this, and it doesn't work very well. Shift A, search for normal map, not normal, normal map, and this color to color, vector to vector. Immediately it looks terrible. First of all, we need to plug this. I already plugged, and we need to change this from flat to box. Still, it looks kind of ugly. It looks kind of, I don't know. I can't describe how it looks because we need to change color space for normal from sRGB to usually non-color, and it should fix the problem. And as you can see, it's even more realistic. It has some depth to it, as you can see. If I remove this, you will see what happens now. This is without normal. This is with normal. This is the leather seat. I don't know if it is realistic as you want, but this is it. Here, we plugged in all the textures with all of these interesting but crazy difficult node system. And this is how you usually work with textures, but there is a big but again, which is called UV mapping. Because this model is rather simple, we don't need to use UV mapping, but UV mapping is the universal language, is a default mapping method in all 3D software, including Blender. And if we, for example, export this model into Unreal Engine, for example, the mapping, the texture is not going to look the same necessarily. It will break because we're using Blender's own technique to map stuff like box model, for example, on top of these models. But Unreal Engine's way of projecting images might be different, so it doesn't translate directly to that. This is why we always need to use UV mapping. To explain what UV unwrapping is, I opened the new blend file. So UV is just 2D representation of a 3D model, not 2D representation necessarily, just 2D form of a 3D model. It's just like, for example, this is a box, let's say, right? And you want to paint an image on this box, and you want this image to be continuous. For example, you want to paint some land, stones, grass, trees, right? But they should be continuous. They should, for example, continue from here. For example, you have, let's change this to surface. You draw some grass here, right? And you drew a tree here, but your tree is going to be just like that, and your tree should be continuous. As you can see, the tree, the part of the tree is on this face. And in order to draw like that, it's better to kind of cut the edges of the box and kind of open it and make it flat and put on the ground and draw on top of the flat surface, right? It's much easier to draw on the flat surface rather than drawing on top of this three-dimensional shape. So UV unwrapping is just the process of cutting different edges and making it flat. I'm not talking about going to edit mode and selecting this edge and pressing V to cut and put it like that. No, it's just a representation. It's not physically cutting the edges of your model. So, but again, anyway, it's done in edit mode. So let's go select. But when you're cutting the edge, you should think about how it is going to open. For example, now I have, let's say I have cut this many edges, and now I know that these two edges will be here, will open here, right? So it will be something like this. Two edges, two faces. This face will be here, this face will be here, and this face will lie here, and this face there, this face there. But remember, if you miss some edges, if you don't cut some edges, for example, let's say I didn't cut these two edges, right? And just imagine in real life, how are you going to make flat of these four surfaces, four faces? This edge will be kind of squashed, right? It will be, it's difficult to open that kind of shape, right? This shape, how do you make it flat? So remember to cut some areas. For example, and again, if you, let's say you cut this edge, but you didn't cut this edge. Yeah, this face will open there. Now this edge will be squashed, this edge will be stretched. So there will be a lot of stretch and squashing in different areas. So you should cut this in a way, don't want to call it cutting, just, I don't know, maybe marking. But in real life, you need to cut with a scissors, right? You need to cut with a knife or something. So yeah, you need to think about that. You need to think in terms of making everything flat easily. So yeah, now let me actually show you how the process goes. You select the necessary edges and you go to UV. If you look here in edit mode, you have this UV menu, and you can bring that menu up by pressing U, and you just mark seams. If you mark seams, then you can deselect those edges because they will retain the marked seam. I forgot this edge, right? U, mark seam. Yeah, but this is not all. This is just the first step. And now you select everything and press U again and select unwrap. Now nothing happened because we are not in UV editing mode. There is a UV editing mode, and you can go there, or you can just come here and you can just change it to UV editor. You just go to UV editing and select everything, and you will see that you have successfully unwrapped. And also it's a bit too much, but you can come here and find your UV maps, because one object can have multiple UV maps here. This is one UV map that we have just made. You can remove it, and if you go to UV editing, there is nothing. There is no UV information. You want to create this again, select everything, press U, unwrap, and you have successfully created. And you can also unwrap only one part of your object, for example, only these two parts. You can just press U, let's go to UV editing, just select these two faces and press U and just UV unwrap. Only those two faces if you are applying a material to only these two faces. So this is also important. So, and other faces will have a different kind of structure. If you are applying materials only to these two faces, you can separately UV unwrap them. So it's also possible, I mean. But if you select everything, it's kind of screwed up. It's not great. So maybe you can just select these two faces. Which two were they? These two? You can just move them. You can move them along x-axis and put them here. And if you select everything, it's a bit nicer here. So this is possible. Now let's go back and UV unwrap one of our objects. Now we are in our project. Let's actually unwrap this this monitor, this computer. First of all, let's try to find one interesting wallpaper, Apple wallpaper, and try to give it to screen black, or just let's call it screen now, because it's not going to be black now, screen. And remember, I gave the same material to this little guy, yeah, so I need to change it. I don't want any image to be visible here. I don't know, maybe let's metal parse, that's fine. So now let's find Apple iMac wallpaper and bring it into Blender. Let's go to shading. I'm going to bring an image here. So I brought this hello. It's called hello. It doesn't, it's not visible because Blender doesn't know how to correctly project this image on top of the surface. Remember how we can manage this image? We need a coordinates node, texture coordinate node, and we need mapping node. Shift A, mapping, find them, and let's use generated because Blender by default uses UV. Now we try to use generated, and we can see something. Let's test box, and yeah, it's working. It's not bad. And let's you can move this location of the image. Let's move it along x-axis. Actually, it's not x, I think it's y-axis, and it doesn't move along y-axis for some reason. X, it moves, but y, it doesn't move whatever I do, because it moves along z-axis because I'm using box. Let's try Z. Hold down Shift for more precise movements. Let's put it in a nice correct place. It's about 1. And yeah, I think we need to change the scale to along X, or no, Z, because it's kind of a bit stretched. And let's move along Z-axis now. We can do it like that, but it's not great because it's Blender's own way of kind of projecting image. Let's use the universal UV way. Let's test it. Let's delete that and flat. Blender is using UV automatically. It's easy. So let's go to UV editing. Let's come closer and let's select this face and see how this face is looking. This face is right about here. And let's go to material view here. By pressing Z, I went to material view. You can change it to material view from here too. And if I select this and press G to move, you can see the image here. And actually I can just press U and unwrap this only face. If there is only face, you can just press U and press unwrap. Now it's kind of a bit strange, so we can rotate it from here. Let's press R 90 degrees and put it right here, and you can press S to scale and have this nice. You can hold down Shift to scale them more incrementally. So we have this nice hello now, and it's very I mean it's very intuitive doing it here rather than just typing random numbers and trying to match it here. So it's very intuitive. You can see what you're doing, what face covers what. You can just easily see it here. So let's go back to shading, and there is one problem which is something new to you again, that if we go to rendered view, everything is calculated, right, including lights. For example, now we can see this light is, we will talk about this more in the next video, but yeah. And if I delete this light, this screen doesn't look like screen. It's just like a piece of paper is sticked on top of the surface, right? It doesn't light anything. In order this to light, we have a nice emission option here. Let's turn emission and emission strength. Emission is just emitting light. Let's bring up the strength to 1, and it's completely white. But there is good news that you can plug this color into this color because it's just white now. You can change the color to, for example, yellow, red, or whatever, and you can see the image very blurry image, and you can just plug this color to this, and here we go. We have nicely lit image. So yeah, this is how you use UV editing and how you can connect images to different slots. Now we can call this finished, and in the next video we will learn how to create a nice environment, how to light our scene, and how to render a nice image. In this lesson we're going to learn how to light the scene and how to render. We're going to look at some lighting options, light objects and environment lighting, and we also learn some render properties, some correct configurations, Also, we learned how to work with cameras in Blender because you need a camera just in real life, just like in real life. In real life, we take our camera and take a photo or video, right? And it is the same in Blender. You need a camera to take a photo or video of the creations, of the objects that you have created. First of all, we need to talk about lights. And in order to see lights, we need to be in rendered view. For that, you can click on this last ball-shaped icon, or you can press Z and go to render it. As soon as you go there, I can see that we have some light here, but we have other light objects which directly lights the scene. So let's create one. So lights, Shift A, light objects, and let's go ahead and create this point light. This is a point light which is omnidirectional, which means it lights everywhere around it. As you can see, it's top, bottom, everywhere. It just lights everywhere around it. And there is sun, which doesn't have a position. It doesn't matter where you put it. It only gives directional light. This is just directional light, just like that. This is sun, and it gives the same amount of light everywhere. And you can control the light properties here in this green button. You can control the light color, the strength, as you can see, and other things. Let's delete that. Shift A, we have the spotlight, which is just kind of a good light to make, for example, car headlights, or you have a lot of control here. You can see, you can create studio lights with this, some sort of studio lighting. Let's increase the strength, for example, 1200, and you can see it very clearly. You have some spot size options here, some radius here to make it sharper, the edge sharper or less sharp, just like that. And it's also controlled from here, just like that. Now it's the sharpest. You have two places to control the fall off, and you have this area light, my personal favorite light. I don't know why, but I just like this type of light. It's directional, but it has some limits, and it has position and also fall off. If you bring it closer, it's lighter. If you bring it further away, it is not very bright. And it's different in this way. It's much different from the sunlight, which we have seen here. Now I'd like to talk about the environment light, because you can light the scene with the environment color. Here in world properties, this is world properties, you can control the environment color, and also you can bring in a special image which is called HDRI images. Sorry for that pronunciation. HDRI images. It's also called, if I'm not mistaken, it's called 360-degree image. You can bring it in, I'll show you how. But first of all, look at these simple properties, color and strength. You can change the color of the environment, just like that, if you need. And the world goes blue. And you have the strength here. If you increase the strength too much, it starts to become white. So let's bring it back to 1. And let's bring this interesting color back to some sort of gray. And now I will show you how to bring in HDRI images. You can go to shading, and here you can select an object and you can see the material of object. But this environment also has some sort of material. So let's go and sorry, not here. You'll change it from here, object to world. Now in the same way, you can plug in different nodes to set up to create a new material for your world. And you can also change materials from here. For example, you can click on this and duplicate this, and you just change the name, my world or custom world, whatever, and you can change the color from here, just like that. And if you go back to world, it's the default world, and this is your world. So, and you can set up a different node system here. For example, let me bring in a texture, special texture. So I press Shift A, texture and environment texture. These textures, this node doesn't require but expects 360-degree images. Let's find some 360-degree images on polyhaven.com. Now I'm in polyhaven.com. I can go down and browse HDRI images. These are 360-degree images, and now I'd like to find, I like this one. Let's download it, and you can download it in 4K EXR, OpenXR format, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 4K, but let me download it in HDR format, and it's less size. If you see, OpenXR is 88 megabytes and this one is 27. Let's download this in 4K. We don't need 4K, 2K is fine. 6 megabytes only, let's go with that. So once you have downloaded, you should save that in a kind of folder where you can find it easily, and you can open it from here. So here it is, my HDRI file. So let's open that and plug this into background, and let's go to rendered view. And here you see this amazing, interesting, great sunlight here. When you render, if you want to see the background, you should download higher resolution like 4K or 8K. But I want to create a kind of room, and I'm not going to see these background images. This is why I don't need, I only need the lighting. Of course, you can control this the same way that you control these material images, just like these, for example. These two, texture coordinate and mapping nodes. With these nodes, you can control the world images too. So let's go ahead and find texture coordinates node and also mapping node, and plug this in, generated vector, and you can, for example, rotate it around z-axis if you want to change direction of the light. And this is pretty much everything that you want to do here. You don't usually want to scale this image or move this image. Usually it's enough to just rotate the image. Now we have learned how to control this environment light. We can talk about render properties. So let's go to render settings. In Blender we have two render engines, Cycles and Eevee. These create final images, final rendered images, and these are really powerful, both of them. So Eevee is real-time, which means it's simply, I would say it means it's fast. It's just really fast. And yeah, once it's calculated, it doesn't need any other calculation. It calculates everything automatically, but it's not as realistic as Cycles. Cycles is slower but more realistic. So this is it. This is the main difference between them. So for example, if you look at the shadows and highlights and reflections and all that stuff, in Cycles it's much better. If you go to Eevee, you don't have any of that. Of course, you can simulate some of them. You can bake some lighting, but it takes a lot of time, and it's much better to use. If you want realistic looking render, you need to work with Cycles. I think I will just create a video about Cycles and Eevee. Actually, I think I created. We talked about this in the video called Let's Learn Everything About Materials in Blender. I think in that video I talked about that, so you can watch that. So in this video we will go ahead and work with Cycles. We will ignore Eevee for now. Cycles is a ray tracer, and it simply means it's more realistic, let's say. And if you have a GPU, which means graphics card, you should enable that for Cycles because it works much faster. I think by default it's in CPU, but I changed it to GPU and I saved a default file, just like here. But you should do that with an empty project, not with a ready-made project. So I showed that in a separate video in the first videos of this course. And if you don't see that, or if it's grayed out, you should come here to render settings. It's just edit preferences, and in system you have these rendering options. So you have this none, and as you can see it's grayed out. And now if I save it, Blender will use only the CPU, which is your processor, central processor, and CUDA optics. These are for NVIDIA's cards, and HIP, I believe it's for Intel. No, AMD. One API I think is for Intel. So CUDA or optics. If you have RTX card, just switch on optics, it's faster. If you have an older GPU by NVIDIA, you just go to CUDA or something, and yeah, that's it. And you just turn on. It's for cycles, but in Eevee you don't have that option. But Eevee typically uses, basically it just uses your GPU. It doesn't, as far as I know, it doesn't use your CPU that much, at least. But for cycles you need to use your GPU. And the most important thing in render options are the samples. I believe this is the most important thing, and maybe in performance and light paths we will look at some of them, and in color management. So everything else is pretty much secondary and not very important. So now we have, let's actually close everything. As I said, we are looking at 4 things: sampling, light paths, performance, and color management. We can skip performance, we will see. So sampling, we have 2 things here: viewport and render. These are the most important ones. In viewport, this is our viewport samples. This is our viewport, and the sample count is the most important. If this is ticked or checked, you just uncheck it, because for viewport you don't need that. And you keep samples low for the viewport, because this is the viewport. This is the viewport, and you can see here Blender is rendering each time I move the camera, right? As you can see, and it goes up to 32, and it's pretty fast. But if you do 256, for example, Blender will calculate it for a long time. So in order to avoid that extra calculation, just keep this sample count very low. And what this means is the quality. I think you already understand that. It's quality. So the higher this number is, the higher quality you will have. And this is the denoise option, which is better to uncheck because it's extra work for your computer. But it's a nice feature. If you turn on, Blender will denoise your scene automatically. Denoising is just trying to remove noise from your scene, especially in this is a pretty simple scene, and it doesn't have a lot of noise. But if you have a lot of noise, you will see the difference very well. But here you don't see the difference very much, as you can see here. For example, let me demonstrate something. Control B and just do this, and for example just do like that, and you can see noise here, right? Noise means just noise, very small grain or something. If you denoise it, it's much plain or much kind of better, right? So let's turn this off, and in order to get rid of this space, you can press Control Alt B and you will get rid of that. Control B, Control Alt B to kind of troubleshoot different areas of your render. So 2 things: samples. I think 3 things. Just uncheck these 2 and ignore them. For viewport, and just turn the samples down to 32. It's the best setting for your viewport. Now, what is this render? Isn't this render? Because in Z it is rendered view, but we have viewport and render here. The thing is, viewport is what we see just here to work with, to troubleshoot, to check how it looks in render. But render here is the final render that we do once we have worked with it, once we're satisfied with our result. and we take a picture or render, do a final render. There is something called final render. And when you do a final render, these settings are taken into account. These are the settings which Blender will use to do final renders. And final rendering is done with a camera. Now do we have a camera? Yes, we have a camera. I will show you how to work with the camera in a moment. So this is for that. And here we have different settings, as you can see. Denoise turned on. In viewport, noise threshold is off. In here, it is on and it's done. By default, I believe it's 0.01, but it takes a lot more time. Not too much time, but it doesn't help you a lot. As far as in my experience, it's 0.1 is a good number. And maximum samples. It depends on how satisfied you are with your final render. If you are not satisfied, just increase it. And then I talked that light paths is another thing that we'll look at here. I don't want to explain too many things here. One thing, this is also kind of quality, but there is a trade-off. If you increase quality, wherever you are, what kind of program it is, if you have more quality, you'll spend more time to do the final render. More quality, more difficult for the computer to calculate. So it's always true. It's a universal law, I would say. And here you have some presets. You have limited, and it also works in the viewport. This is not a good scene to demonstrate that, but let me show you. Limited global illumination. As I said, it's not a good place to demonstrate that. So full global illumination. This is full global illumination, so everything is increased. This was the default. Default numbers are great, so just keep it default. But one thing, if you don't have a glass in your scene, just decrease this number to whatever, like 4 or something. If you don't have transparency, you can decrease this too. So yeah, you need to know a bit more than just what we have learned to understand this stuff. So yeah, and we have clamping. I think you don't need to touch other things because you will just mess things up pretty quickly. So yeah, these are the only things that you might worry about. If you have a powerful computer, for example, you can just set it to full global illumination and look at these. If you don't have, for example, glass in your scene, I think usually you have a glass, and keep this number low. For example, volumetrics, if you don't have smoke, if you don't have fire or clouds, you can keep this number too low. And transparency, you can keep those low. But other than that, they don't affect too much. Now, here in performance, you can just, for example, use tiling. And the tile size is, for most graphics cards, 512 or 124 is a good number, especially for newer graphics cards. If your graphics card is old, you can just set it to 512 or 256. Just these numbers are great. So 512 in my case is a good number for my graphics card. And the last one is color management. And you can see the effect pretty quickly here. View transform AGX is the newest in Blender. It released recently. It's added to Blender recently. Before we had Filmic. It's a bit different if you look. And even before that, we had standard, and it's the light is too bright and kind of it's a bit off. So if you look at the highlights on the car, it's too bright, and the colors. Look at the colors; they are too saturated, I think. And look at Filmic, and it's better now. And even better is this AGX, which is the newest. It's even better, I believe. Filmic, look at the colors. And AGX, it's a bit, I don't know, desaturated, but everyone says that it's more realistic. I don't know. I prefer Filmic in some situations and AGX in some others. So here I think filmic is a bit better, and look, you don't need to change that. You can change it after the fact, but what I usually set it to is medium high contrast. You have some contrast here, or high contrast. I think it's a bit too much. Medium high contrast. Let's set it to high contrast. I usually jump between these two, high contrast or medium high contrast. And you have exposure, gamma. Actually, you can change all of these three things in Photoshop after you have created the image, or in any other image editing software. So this is everything about the Cycles render engine. Of course, this doesn't directly translate to Eevee, but we will talk about Eevee in one of the future videos. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is the camera. So we have a camera, right? To look at the scene from the camera, you press 0 on your numpad. So numpad is the group of numbers, just like a calculator numbers, on the right side of your full keyboard. If you don't have a full keyboard, you can press this icon, which is camera icon. But you should definitely need a full keyboard to better work with the camera. So because you have a lot of shortcuts here. So 0 to look, or from here you can look at the camera, through the camera to the scene. So first of all, 0 is to activate the camera. What if you have two cameras? Let's create another camera and put it somewhere about here. What if you have two cameras looking at your scene? So if you press 0, you're looking at this camera only. How do you look from this camera? So you can set this camera to be active. You should set it to be active. So for that, you just select this desired camera and press Ctrl 0. And now, whenever you press 0, you look at the scene from this camera, right? Now, this is two shortcuts, right? 0 to look from the camera, Ctrl 0 to make the camera active camera. So the next thing is to bring the camera to the view. For example, you want to put the camera right here, the active camera here. You need to put the active camera here. Let's activate this camera and put it here, just here, or I don't know, anywhere, just here maybe, or here. In order to put that, select the active camera, or you don't have to select, you just set your desired camera active and press Ctrl Alt 0, and your active camera will come to the view that you're in. I just brought the camera here, right? Now how can I move it a bit, because I don't like this, and the objects do not fit into my camera. I want my camera to be further away. Of course, you can look from the top and put the camera away and look at the scene from the camera. Even if you put it away, it doesn't look great, right? It is still out of sight. So how do you move the camera? It's easy. Just look from the camera at the scene, and I will show you one way. Just press G to move your camera while the camera is selected. Remember, while the camera, if you cannot select your camera from here, you can always select it in the outliner. Just select the camera in the outliner and press G. You can move the camera anywhere. You can also rotate the camera by pressing RZ, RX, and whatever. So the next thing is 0 to look from the camera and press G to control the camera. Even better, but it's a bit, I would say it's a bit dangerous. You can press N and go to view, and you can lock camera to view. You can lock this camera to view, which means whenever you move, just like normal ways, like by pressing the middle mouse button, right? You can move just like that, for example, or shift middle mouse button, you can pan. Whatever you do, if you orbit or pan, the camera just follows. You will always be looking through the camera, and the camera just follows the view. So for that, you can select the camera, press N, and go to view, and here you can lock camera to view. And now let's press N again. You can go wherever you want. You can put the camera wherever you want, and it just follows the view. But don't forget to release that. Don't forget to uncheck this lock, because after you're satisfied, you accidentally move and the camera moves with you. So after you're satisfied with the view, just uncheck this lock camera to view option. So these are very important. You can just note down these things or just watch the video again if you're forgetful. So I have talked about a few things. I will just repeat. So 0 to look from the camera, and you can just look at the scene from somewhere and press Ctrl-Alt-0 to bring the active camera to the view. You can just press G to move the camera. You can also activate any camera by selecting that camera and Ctrl-0 to activate that camera. And I will show you something else which will be very nice to know. You can also move the camera towards or away from any other object right inside from the camera. So it's another shortcut which you might want to remember. You press G and you press middle mouse button once, and you move the cursor up or down. It's moving the camera away or towards the scene. So it's a really nice option. You don't have to, for example, lock the camera to view. It's an easy shortcut. Press G and press middle mouse button once, and just move the camera up and move the mouse up or down to go towards the object or away from the object. It just moves the camera along this z-axis, its local z-axis. So this is everything. I believe you will remember these options with the camera. And let's quickly look at the camera properties. Here are the camera properties. You have this focal length. If you understand how cameras work, you know these. If you have very large focal length, your camera will look like it's almost orthographic. But if you have very little small focal length, it's a wide angle camera. So I would say 32, 34 is a good number in many situations, but Blender's default is 50, I believe. And another important thing is this depth of field. It's open by default. As you can see, depth of field is just a very nice bokeh effect. For example, let's bring the camera here, G and middle mouse button once, and move it away a little. And now let's go to the render settings and just turn this depth of field on and select this computer as a focus object. Now the camera will look at the computer, and this is a little blurry. Now the camera is focusing on this computer object, and this is out of focus. This is why it's a bit blurry. You can increase the blurriness by bringing this number down, for example, from 2.8 to just 2, and there is more blur here. Or instead you can focus on a different thing. For example, you can focus on this chair, and there is not enough distance to focus on this. I think the camera is too close. You can focus on it just like that. You're focusing on the chair. You need to have this origin point in a good position to focus, because camera is just focusing on the origin point. Right click, set origin to geometry right here. Now you have better focus here. Now you have better focus, and the computer is out of focus. And also you can control the focus distance just by changing this number. For example, 1 meter. It's too close, I think, to the camera, or 2 meters. Now it's focusing on this chair, and just like that you can change it from here too. Okay, I will show you one more thing. You can see the distance, the focus distance, very clearly if you open this viewport display and turn on this limits option. And this is the focus distance. you can increase it to focus on different things. Shift Z to go to wireframe view. You can change this distance to focus on anything you want. For example, let's focus on the keyboard. For example, let's rotate the camera a little, focus on the keyboard, look from the camera, render view, and now I'm focusing on the keyboard. This is out of focus, and some other things might be out of focus. So yeah, turn this off after you're finished. And yeah, you can bring this number down for more blurriness, just like that. Much more blur here, and look at this keyboard. Or you can increase this to have less blur, just like that. Now we can do a final render. We can test a final render. But the final thing that I usually do is to create a nice environment, because I don't want to render these things in open space, right? I don't want to render them in open space. Just like that, for example. Control-Alt-0 to put it here. Rendered view. I don't want to render it just like that, right? I just want to create a nice atmosphere, for example. Not atmosphere, just a place. Go to edit mode, press 1, Shift Z, GZ to put it here, and make it larger, because this room should be large. Put it here again, and maybe about here. Make sure the camera is inside this room, S again to scale it up. Put it about here, right? GZ, and it should be not that high. GZ, about this height, and the cameras are inside, right? So let's go ahead and look from this camera. Sorry, I'll look inside and I don't see any light because this room is closed. I should open something here. Go to edit mode, Control R to open a kind of window here. Control R, Control B. Let's open Control B and select some faces, these two faces for example, and let's delete those two faces and see how this affects. And now the room is much brighter. Also, I will Control R here, Shift Z, or Z solid, face selection, select this face and delete this face. So now let's look at the scene. I think it's bright enough. You can also create some sort of visual interest here, but I'm not going to do that. So let's try a render now. Now finally, before we do a final render, there is one more step, one more configuration. So come here to output settings and you can change here the resolution of the final rendered image. Now we have full HD, 100% full HD. If you want 4K, you can come here and bring this to 200. But remember, it will be much slower if you try to render 4K. And if you don't have a slightly powerful computer, Blender might even just tell you, no, I don't want to render that. So 100 is okay in our purpose. Also, if you want this to fit in your camera a bit better, you can just change the camera's focal length to something like, I don't know, maybe 42, and you will see more here. But I will just stick with 50. And also you can come here and try to render a square image. You control the camera's shape from here too, so that you see more here. And now let's go closer to the objects. And yeah, after you have set up that, you can just come here, and these are two options that we can create images. So render image, because in this little course we're going to render only still images, not animation. So render image, let's select that and wait for the render to finish. So the render finished. It's pretty fast, right? Not too slow. So it took about 5 seconds to render, and it's nice. Yeah, it's not too bad. So we can go out of, but still you can see the rendered image right here in render options. It's not bad, but it's not very high quality, right? And you have those little artifacts here and there. So this is it. I wouldn't say that this is the best project in the world. It's very far from that, but I think it's a nice introduction to lighting in Blender, rendering, working with the camera, creating environments, and having this final render. And I hope you have learned something in this course. So thank you again, and see you in the next video.